Welcome in to another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Max Chadwick alongside Dalton Wasserman here with our final conference preview going into the 2025 season. We are previewing all 17 ACC teams going into next year. Dalton, should be a very, very fun conference. We had a couple playoff teams from last year in Clemson and SMU. Maybe get a couple more in 2025.
Look, two playoff teams out of this conference last year in a pretty wide open race that went right down to the wire, right? We got teams. We got obviously Clemson and SMU in the title game. We had Miami with their high-flying offense. Louisville's a good team. We've got some other dark horses that people believe in, a team like Duke, right, that won 9 games last year. So I think when you look at this conference, especially the top half of it, you really look at a competitive conference. But I think it's not given enough credit for how talented that it is. And again, it got two playoff teams last year, especially one that played relatively well in their playoff game compared to the rest of the first round games.
Absolutely. So let's go over a lot of these teams right now using PFF stats that are available to you guys with a PFF Plus subscription at subscribe.pff.com. You get access to the best betting tools and fantasy tools on the planet, access to our mock draft simulator, and like I said, access to all the grades for every team and player in the NFL. And, of course, college football. A Seahawks fan in the chat right now saying, what's up from a Clemson fan. He's a Seahawks and Clemson fan, Dalton. We're getting to their team very, very soon in this preview. But first up in our ACC preview is the Boston College Eagles. When Bill O'Brien, in his first year last year as a head coach, picking up after Jeff Hafley, who left to become the Packers defensive coordinator, kind of had the same year as Jeff Hafley in his final year. Boston College had a 7-6 record for their second straight season. In week 3, Boston College was number 24 in the AP poll. It was the first time that Boston College was in the top 25 in 6 years. Their defense was really good last year, 31st in the country in EPA per play. They have a strong secondary coming back. Have some concerns up front with Donovan Ezeraku now leaving the program, and they lost all 4 starters from the defensive line too. And on offense, Bill O'Brien did do a really good job helping out Tommy Castellanos, the quarterback, improve his passing grade by over 17 points, but he transferred to Florida State this offseason. So now he has a new quarterback in Grayson James, who did start some games for them last year, and a rebuilt offensive line in front of them too. But they do have a lot of really good weaponry back. But like I said, Dalton, that defense, that secondary is probably the strength of the team.
Yeah, it's very much an experienced secondary and one of the better defenses in the ACC last year. But you look at especially the safety pair of KP Price and Carter Davis, and then you look at the unit as a whole, 7 of the 8 defensive backs that played at least 250 snaps last year are coming back for this Boston College team. Bill O'Brien, obviously a pro coach for a long time, wants his team to be physical, wants it to be based in defense, and that defense keeping him in games while he figures out what kind of premier talent he can try to find on offense with Grayson James now at quarterback and trying to build the weaponry around him.
I'm a little worried about the defensive line right now. It was a really good defensive line last year at Boston College, but they lost a superstar edge rusher in Donovan Ezeraku, a very good D tackle too in Cam Horsley. Ezeraku was a first-team PFF All-American last year, now with the Dallas Cowboys. Horsley led all ACC D tackles last year with an 84.5 run defense grade. And Boston College also lost their other starting edge rusher and their other starting D tackle too. So 2 stars gone for that defensive line, and all 4 starters gone for that defensive line too. Dawn, tell me more about the new quarterback, though, in Grayson James, who did play a little bit for the Eagles last year. What should we know about him?
Yeah, he had starting experience down at FIU before coming to Boston College. He started a handful of games last year after Tommy Castellanos got benched. And you're talking about a guy who's kind of the anti-Castellanos when it comes to James being a pocket passer, a guy who's not going to make a lot of big dynamic, explosive plays, but he is functional, especially in the intermediate parts of the field where he had the 11th best passing grade in the country last year. He's going to attack the intermediate part of the field. He's going to attack the middle of the field for sure, and he's going to get into that second level with his throws against zone coverage, getting over those linebackers' heads. So I think what you're talking about for Bill O'Brien is a functional pocket passer, a guy that he's more used to, right, between his time, back in, his time in New England, and even you go back to his time at Penn State and everywhere he's coached, he's used to those classic pocket passers. James is that. The only thing with James that he doesn't add a whole lot to the table when it comes to improvising or adding extra to the offense with his physical ability. Just a 2.8 28% big-time throw rate over the last 4 seasons, bottom 10 among passers with at least 500 dropbacks, and less than a 10% explosive run rate. So physically, he's not the most dynamic quarterback in the world, but he can absolutely function in that intermediate range over the middle of the field, making those throws off of play action, and really just running the offense the way that O'Brien wants to.
Absolutely. Should have a really good tight end helping him out too in Jeremiah Franklin. Franklin was actually one of the 20 most valuable tight ends in America last year, according to PFF's wins above average metric. He caught 80% of his contested targets and had a 145.3 passer rating when targeted. That was 5th among all tight ends in college football. Jeremiah Franklin also got open on 92% of his targets last year against single coverage, the best rate in the country. So very good route runner, good hands too, great in 50-50 situations. Very underrated tight end who should become a much bigger part of the offense this year.
No, absolutely. I think it's when you talk about especially exactly those type of throws I was just talking about for Grayson James, I think Franklin is the exact right player at that tight end spot. Look, Bill O'Brien, he's going to want, it's cold weather, it's up in Boston, he's going to want to get heavy, he's going to want to run the football, he's going to want multiple tight ends out there. I think Franklin is really a guy who's going to be a focal point in the passing game, especially off of play action.
Who is the star defensive player for Boston College next year?
So we mentioned that secondary, and the star safety back there is KP Price, a 77.7 coverage grade last season. He's a very versatile player who can play all over the place. I really like him in the box. I think he's a physical player who likes to play in run support as well. So when you look at KP Price leading the middle of this defense and just all of the things he can do, I think we're seeing this more and more from safeties throughout college football. Free safety and in the box and in the slot. He can do a little bit of everything, and he's really the leader of the secondary.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Dalton, bottom line time right now. 5.5 is the win total for the Boston College Eagles. What is the bottom line for this team? And basically, will they make a bowl game in 2025? They're making a bowl game, I believe, in 2 straight years now.
Yeah, I think you're looking at that's kind of the cutoff here, and they've got some really tough games on their schedule. You look at they beat Michigan State in a really tight game last year, and now they have to go to East Lansing. You've got Clemson, you've got Louisville, Notre Dame, SMU, Georgia Tech, all on the schedule. I think there's a lot of games here where you could go, okay, maybe they're not the more talented team on the field, but that bowl game cutoff seems to be that's probably a realistic expectation. I will Fordham, Stanford, maybe Cal.
I'm going to go under for them, I think.
You're going under?
I'm going to go 5-7. Should be a really solid year for them. I see a lot of games on that schedule where I think they're not going to be favored in. I'm going to go 5-7 for them as a prediction.
Cal games at home. They're probably favored in, 3? Solidly.
It is a cross-country trip to Stanford. They should win that game. Cal is at BC, cross-country trip.
Yeah, but they're probably of equal caliber, and they played a game down to the wire last year. That's the thing is BC is going to be this team that's playing in a lot of these 50-50 games, and they barely beat Michigan. I think maybe
they could start 4-0, honestly.
They could, but Michigan State played a very tight game with them last year. So that's going to be a game early on that's going to tell us. And it's at Michigan State. Yeah. We're expecting them maybe to be a little bit better. I think I'm going to go with you. I'm going to go Boston College just under.
Yeah.
That 5.5 is the right number for them. It's going to be right on the border of bowl, but the middle of their schedule, you look at this run of games, Pitt, Clemson, and there's a game against UConn in there who they're also pretty good. Louisville, Notre Dame, SMU, Georgia Tech. There's a hard middle of the season. If they don't start 4-0, they probably are in real danger of missing a bowl game. I'm going to ride with you. I'll go under on that. Probably 5, and they're going to be on that 5-6 win borderline. That's the right number for them.
Our guy Seahawks fan in the chat also going under for us with the Boston College Eagles right now.
Gotta love when people agree with us.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often, and Dawn and I usually don't agree with each other, but we're both going to go soft under for Boston College. They still could make a bowl game for the 3rd straight year, but we'll go with 5-7 for them right now. Dawn, before we get to California, I wanted to talk about a little breaking news right now on this show. So there was the announcement yesterday that Deion Sanders would have a press conference today with his doctors to break down what's been going on with him. Great news coming out of that press conference, though. He had apparently a bladder tumor. He had his bladder removed, and he is now, quote, cured from cancer.
That's fantastic, because I know he hasn't been around the program for, the last couple of months, right?
Yeah. There's been a lot of speculation about Deion Sanders about recently, and he said yesterday to make a will because of just how concerned he was with his medical issues, but based off this press conference, very great news for Deion Sanders, the head coach of Colorado, and thankfully he is cured from his cancer now. So
fantastic, and he's sticking around for as much.
I know they've not said anything about that. So I think this announcement was basically a joyous press conference saying, "Hey, I'm cured from cancer. Let's rock."
And because I believe today is the first day of training camp for them, and I'm sure a lot of schools, because we're getting within that 4-week range of the first day of college football. But that's just as good as you could hope for. They're obviously beyond all the coaching or anything football related. Obviously, just a very serious situation, and for as much Deion Sanders, certainly not one to go dark on us, when it comes to talking and being out with the media, but we really haven't heard anything at all from him for the past 2 or 3 months, which is very, very unusual. So to hear that as the first time, obviously him speaking in a while, it's just fantastic.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch Colorado this year without Shedeur Sanders, without Travis Hunter, obviously, but still have a great head coach in Deion Sanders, who now thankfully is hopefully fully healthy from everything. He's been battling a lot of medical issues in recent years, but that's fantastic news from Deion Sanders, because a lot of people were kind of assuming the worst yesterday. A lot of people thought maybe he was departing the program yesterday too, but very great news coming out of that press conference saying that he is cured from his bladder cancer. So absolutely massive news for Colorado and Deion Sanders, and we're all very, very happy for Coach Prime down there in Colorado. Want to answer a question from Jay Thomas in the chat. Notre Dame will be getting their own episode as a one-off video. We're not including them in this ACC video to make it 18 teams in this conference, so they will be getting their own one-off coming out probably around Sunday or Monday of next week.
Yeah, we're gonna record that later this week. That'll be late, possibly even by the end of this week. That might be a thing, but we're gonna do that separately for them.
We absolutely still will do Notre Dame though. We're not gonna ignore a team that made it all the way to the national title game. Essentially, not gonna ignore a team that Anthony Tresh is on the sidelines for either.
That too.
Yeah. We're definitely gonna do them. We're definitely gonna do them. All right. Next up in this ACC preview is the California Golden Bears. California's first year as a member of the ACC was kind of a mirror image of their last year in the Pac-12. They had a 6-7 record, just like 2023, and a bowl loss in both years too. The Golden Bears have now had 5 straight losing seasons under head coach Justin Wilcox. His defense really wasn't to blame last year. They were 35th in EPA per play on that side of the ball. It was the offense that did not pull their weight. Last year, though, they only averaged 25.1 points per game, which was 90th in college football. Even more concerns on that side of the ball, too, because they lost so much talent to the transfer portal. But the defense should, again, be a little strong up front.
No, absolutely. And look, last year I would say the strength of this team was the secondary. This year it's going to be the front seven and the guys returning, especially in their run defense. They got Harrison Taggart at linebacker from BYU in the portal. They got TJ Bush in the portal, right? They've got several players. I think this year for Justin Wilcox, the focus is going to be on the front seven, while they're going to have a little bit of a younger secondary, right? You lose guys like Craig Woodson and Noel Williams. Maybe they won't force as many turnovers on the back end because they were among the national leaders in interceptions last year. So you're talking about a team, I think it's still going to be a good defense, and obviously Wilcox is a defensive coach who's going to make that his focus, but it's going to shift a little more to the front seven and be a more physical up front and winning in the trenches.
Definitely. Now, the question mark is, where is the offense going to come from? Because I mentioned it last year, Cal's offense, 95th in the country in PFF grade and EPA per play, and they had stars, Dalton, on that offense, like their quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, who a lot of people think could be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. He's at Indiana right now. Jaden Knott, in my opinion, a top 15 running back in college football. He's at Oklahoma right now. In my opinion, the best running back in the SEC. And then Jack Endries, who's a top 3 at least tight end in college football. He's at Texas now too. So you had 3 really good players on that offense last year. The offensive line really struggled last year. We had a great quarterback, a great running back, and a great tight end. I know Jay Knott battled injuries last year, but your offense is still pretty bad with those 3 guys. Now all 3 of them are gone, and there's a lot of question marks right now. They have a new quarterback, though, Dolan, in Devin Brown, coming in from Ohio State. He was the backup at Ohio State, but he was a former 5-star recruit coming out of high school, sat on the bench for 3 years. What should we know about him as he finally gets his chance to start now?
I think, to me, the first thing we're going to need to hope for Brown, surrounding that, you mentioned all the skill guys that left, but the biggest problem and the reason they weren't efficient on offense last year was that their offensive line was not good at all. I mean, that's really been a problem for the last couple of years, but especially last year. So Brown, what you want to see is him be protected. Look, he's got a good enough arm to make all the throws, and the little bit that we've seen from him, he's only got 60 career dropbacks. at Ohio State, is that he wants to throw it outside the numbers. I think he's good at identifying pre-snap, those one-on-one matchups, especially those go balls down the sideline, in a bit of the same fashion sometimes with Mendoza. Mendoza was more of an RPO throwing in the intermediate range quarterback, but Brown, I think, is going to work even more to the outside, out toward the numbers. So do I think he can have success? Absolutely. The problem is that when he's under pressure, it really gets away from him. The fundamentals get away from him. And a lot of that is just a lack of experience. But, 27.4 passing grade under pressure with 7 sacks taken, okay, in just 14 pressure dropbacks. It's just that's going to be the key is can they keep him protected enough? Because he's a decent athlete. I'm not going to tell you he's not going to, set the world on fire running the ball, but he wants to throw it outside the numbers. He wants to be calm and clean in the pocket. I think the offensive line is really going to be the biggest factor in his success because he wants to throw the ball downfield vertically. He's just got to have time to do it.
I mentioned before they lost starting quarterback, star running back, star tight end. They also lost their top receiver, and Isaiah Hunter also transferred to Nebraska too. So missing their top receiver from last year. They did bring in a transfer though, and Jacob DeJesus coming in from UNLV. He was 5th among all Mountain West wide receivers last year with a 78.1 receiving grade. He had a 122.3 passer rating when targeted, was 3rd among all Mountain West wide receivers. He's only dropped 1 of his 101 career catchable targets. He has excellent hands, really. He's 5'7", he's 170 pounds, so he is undersized, but he has got blazing speed that allows him to separate at a very, very high level. Like I said, very strong hands too. Jacob DeJesus right now projects as the top weapon for Devin Brown in that offense next year.
Terrific player when he was at UNLV. Absolutely. Like you mentioned, undersized but blazing fast and knows how to separate. It's exactly the type of slot receiver you want in these open college offenses nowadays.
And on that defense, they also brought in a pretty solid transfer coming in from BYU.
Absolutely. Harrison Taggart, a very well-rounded linebacker, 8th best PFF grade in the Big 12 last year, 70-plus grades in coverage and as a run defender. Is a guy you can just rely on as your middle linebacker, is a fundamentally sound player in all aspects. I think if you're looking for a guy to replace your previous middle linebacker in Teddy Buchanan, you did pretty darn well with it in Harrison Taggart. I was surprised to see him transfer from BYU, and Cal must have put in a pretty good offer for him. But I'll tell you what, for him to be the center of your front 7 in that linebacker room, I really like what they're getting in Taggart, the transfer from BYU.
So, Dalton, it's been a rough stretch for California. They've had 5 straight losing seasons now. Their win total is set at 5.5. Will they make a bowl game or will they miss a bowl game?
It's going to be just like Boston College. It's going to be tight. And it was tight for Cal last year, right? There's some 50-50 games here. They've also got 3 of these East Coast trips out to the Eastern time zone. Boston College and Virginia Tech and Louisville. These have not been trips that have been great to West Coast teams, at least in the first year of this experiment last year. This is going to be very, very close. I think there's going to be a lot of 50-50 games. Also an out-of-conference game against Minnesota coming to them.
Yeah, it's tough.
I think I'm going to take the under, but again, it's like Boston College the same way. You're one 50-50 game, one big road win away from putting that over. It's going to be very close again. I think 5.5 is the right number for this team as well. The quarterback and the offensive line situation worry me. If Devin Brown is not protected, because Mendoza is very decisive, and he gets rid of the ball through contact. I think that's one of his best traits. It's the decisiveness and the toughness that he plays with. Devin Brown's just so inexperienced that I just don't know that he has that yet, right? And he's only got 60 career dropbacks, so I'm going to go under for the Golden Bears here.
I'm also going under. There's so many new faces on offense. I still have question marks on the offensive line. You lost your star tight end. You lost your star running back. You lost your star quarterback. I am excited to watch Devin Brown because Devin Brown, like I said, was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school a few years ago, so finally gets a chance to start next year. But you never know. You never know, right? And it's exciting to watch him next year, but I don't know if they're enough to be a bowl game on offense. They should have a good enough defense to keep them in games next year, maybe a 5-7 football team. But just the amount of losses they had offensively from what was already a bad offense last year, I don't think it'll be enough to make a bowl game in 2025. So I'm going under for California too. Dawn, one school they're probably not going under for is a school up next year. That is the Clemson Tigers. So let's take it back to the 2023 season for Clemson. It was the first time that Clemson did not win 10 games in a year since 2010. Because of that, Clemson entered 2024 with their lowest preseason ranking in the AP poll in a decade. at number 14 in the preseason AP poll. They got back on track last year, though. They won their 8th ACC title over the last 10 years, and they clinched their 7th college football playoff spot, too. And Dalton, this team brought back almost everyone from last year's team, too. They are the clear favorite to win the ACC right now, and in my opinion, one of the top contenders to win the national championship. I rank the best offenses in college football and the best defense in college football. Clemson, the number 1 offense for me, the number 3 defense for me. It is really hard to find any weaknesses on this roster right now. What is the biggest strength of this team?
Just about everything. I mean, they're loaded. They're 16 of their top 20 most valuable players coming back. Starting quarterback, I believe their entire offensive line, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
I think it's their entire offensive
line. Like 5
line.
of the top 6, yeah.
Yeah. Top 3 receivers. Insanely good defensive line. I mean, you're really looking at a team that made the playoff last year. First of all, they were not supposed to win the ACC last year. They did it anyway. Really, the only big names that they're losing off of last year's team are Phil Maffa, R.J. Mickens, and Barrett Carter. That's it. Everybody else. It was such a young football team last year. The number of true freshmen and true sophomores that were making major contributions and starting roles for this team. You look at them now, and the way that they competed, even in the playoff game at Texas. You look at this team and you go, oh, they're not far from national title contention. Nope. Anytime you're looking at college football and you're going, okay, who's coming back? What do these rosters look like? You go, what came back? For Clemson, almost everything. I don't think it's one strength. They're just a loaded football team that should be expected to have a huge year.
The one question mark you can really point out for Clemson, because they are quite literally loaded everywhere else, the one question mark is at running back, though, because they lost their leading rusher from last year, Phil Maffa, who was drafted by the Dallas Cowboys. Now Clemson is projected to start a true freshman at running back in Gideon Davidson. Gideon Davidson was the number 4 running back coming out of high school in the 2025 class, but you're banking on him being immediately ready to be a starting caliber player on this offense next year. That is the one question mark for Clemson, is the running back position. You have a true freshman starting. Even though he's a top 5 running back coming out of high school, it's still a true freshman starting next year for Clemson. But Dalton, when you have a passing attack that could be as good as Clemson's, with, in our opinion, the best quarterback in college football in Cade Klubnik, a weakness at running back isn't going to be that bad, probably.
Yeah, arguably the most improved quarterback in college football last year, certainly on the short list, if not the most improved. And I think the biggest thing, in a similar way on the NFL show, I've talked about Bryce Young just going out there and letting it rip the second half of last year for Carolina. After the Georgia game last year, Cade Klubnik came out and he just let it rip. He said, I'm going to throw it downfield and you're not going to stop me from doing it. He throws vertical balls just beautifully, man. I mean, you're talking about a guy who, look, only 4 quarterbacks in the country were in the top 15 in passing grade, in the intermediate and in the deep range, right? 10 and 19 and then 20 plus. Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, Cade Klubnik, right? 3 of those guys got drafted. Cade Klubnik remains. He's arguably the best vertical passer in college football right now, and he led the nation in passing grade under pressure. There's a certain toughness that he played with last year in big moments. You think about against SMU, against Pitt at the end of the game in a tough defensive game, even against Texas when he made, was it 4 or 5 big-time throws against the best secondary in the country. This is a guy who is not afraid to attack downfield vertically, and he shouldn't be afraid with this stacked group of receivers that he has on the outside. I think the biggest thing is just sometimes the footwork and the accuracy a bit on shorter throws and some of the easier throws in the offense that I think he can still get better with as long as he improves his footwork. He was outside the top 40 in adjusted completion rate and uncatchable pass rate overall. So I think there's a little bit more to go for Klubnik when it comes to fixing his footwork and some of the fundamental throws. But when you talk about the combination of his vertical passing, his mobility, his toughness when he's taking hits inside or outside the pocket, I think he's got, again, small things to work on. Don't stare down your first read too long. Fix the footwork in the quick game a little bit, but there's a lot to work with here. And what we saw after the Georgia game last year, there really wasn't another game. Maybe the South Carolina game wasn't great. Obviously, they lost 17-14, but you're talking about like 2 of the top 5 defenses in the country. Cade Klubnik, he's going to give this team a chance to win this conference, as they should be favored to win this conference, and to win a national title. That's how good he was for the vast majority last season.
Yeah, he was the number 1 quarterback coming out of high school in the 2022 high school class, and he kind of had a rocky first year as a starter in 2023. This past year, though, he showed why he was a 5-star coming out of high school, and in our opinion, like I said, the best quarterback in America going into next year, and could be a candidate to go number 1 overall, I think, in the NFL draft, too. A guy really helping him out in that loaded receiving core is Bryant Wesco Jr. He had 707 receiving yards last year. The only true freshmen who had more than him were Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams. Bryant Wesco also averaged 2.21 yards per route run. That was 5th among all true freshman receivers, and also led Clemson too. He really showed off his upside a lot in that ACC title game against SMU. He caught 8 passes for 142 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game. So Clemson's got an outstanding receiving core. We could have gone with Antonio Williams here too, who's a great receiver. Could be a first-round pick at wide receiver, but as good as Wesco was in his true freshman year, we want to spotlight him here.
Boy, we've talked about this 2027 receiver class a lot. That receiver draft class, that's going to be something else with Jeremiah and Ryan Williams, but Brian Wesco is right on that list too. And you look at, he's just one of just 3 guys that we're going to talk about all year for Clemson, but man, oh man, does Cade Klubnik have a lot to work with on the outside.
So a guy in the 2027 draft that could be a top pick, Dalton, but a guy who could be a top 5 pick in the 2026 draft. Our number 3 player in college football is Peter Woods.
So many defensive players to pick from, actually, until the last minute. I really wasn't sure if we were going to go with Peter Woods or TJ Parker.
Both
Woods,
top 10 players for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it just shows you how loaded this Clemson defense is to narrow it down to Peter Woods, just a monster. I mean, he's one of the best run defenders in the country. He's still improving as a pass rusher, and he's already very good at that. You're looking at a guy, I mean, just leads all returning Power 4 defensive tackles in run defense grade last year. Actually, since 2023. Leads him in pass rush win rate. The sack totals will get there eventually, but he's an absolute brick wall, Max. I don't, with Peter Woods in here, I really don't know how you run between the tackles on Clemson. Yeah. Even last year when we saw Texas run at them, it was out on the edge, right? They were getting around the edge, and even there was times where he was playing off the edge last year, a good amount of snaps, and he was still really, really good. Now, he should be playing inside, should have a full-time inside role this year, but Peter Woods as your anchor of your front 7, it does not get any better than that. I'm with you. I expect him to be a top 10 pick next year.
He just feels like such a solid bet to be a top 5, top 10 pick like Mason Graham was last year too. It just feels the same way. Peter Woods is just the kind of guy that goes in the top 5 or top 10 of a draft at D tackle. He is a phenomenal player. He's 315 pounds. He played a lot of edge rusher last year for Clemson. Now, I think the conditioning is a thing he could work on a little bit. He's only played around, I think, 350 snaps in each of the last 2 years. But other than that, that's all you can find in his game right now.
They try to rotate their guys too. I don't think that's necessarily all on him. They really try to rotate their guys to keep them all fresh, and they've got a deep defensive line too. So I think you're talking about. I mean, he's a superstar. I don't think we have any questions about that. He's one of several superstars on this Clemson defense. Peter Woods in for another big year.
Win total, Dalton, 9.5. For Clemson. I'll say it right now, that is one of the hardest overs I think I've had so far.
If they don't win 10 games, it's a massive disappointment.
It should have been 10.5.
Probably. Yeah. The only reason it's not is because they do have LSU. They're at South Carolina later in the year, and they lost to them last year. You do have,
but even that's 10-2. Right,
you have a rematch with Louisville at Louisville. SMU is coming to Clemson, but I just look at they have to. I look at this team. I don't know how they don't win 10 games.
Yeah.
Because if they don't, something went seriously wrong. I mean, in an injury to a major player or two, or just a lack of execution. But you look at their road games. They never lose at home anyway. But you look at their road games: Georgia Tech, Boston College, Louisville, South Carolina, North Carolina. I mean, I know South Carolina is going to be good. They beat them last year, but even now, I would probably take Clemson. I'm probably taking Clemson over LSU week 1. And if you're taking them in either of those two, I mean, it would be an upset to me if they didn't win 10 games.
Yeah.
It's already an upset to me if they don't win this conference. But 10-2, if this team, the way they're stacked up, lost 3 games, something went really wrong.
I'm taking them to go easily over 9.5. I think this is clearly the favorite in the ACC right now. And I'm not going to spoil any picks that we'll get into later on in August for our playoff predictions, but this is absolutely a national title contender.
Here's a question. I'm going to throw a bonus one at you for this. I know we're trying to keep it moving with 17 teams, and our producers want to go home. But does this team, do they have the best chance in the country to go 12-0?
Probably.
Because all those SEC teams playing each other, it's going to be tough.
Big Ten, Penn State's got Oregon.
Penn State's got Oregon and Ohio State. But the rest of it's manageable, right?
I would say probably, yeah.
Is Clemson the team? Do they have the best chance to go undefeated?
I would say so. Yeah, I would probably say so.
I'm kind of thinking that too. Because if they get by LSU week 1, and that's at home, I do like their chances there. They're loaded, man. I mean, they got the rematch with Louisville, too. That's going to be a big thing, how pissed off they come out for that, because Louisville went into Clemson and physically dominated them on the ground last year. That's what I look at as I go, to me, the rest of these games are what they are, but LSU, Louisville, South Carolina. If they don't go 0-3 there, I think they're winning 10 games.
Another good call off from the chat. Trey Kaiser said Notre Dame, potentially. Notre Dame's got a relatively okay schedule. It's not that hard.
Yeah,
but
they got the ACC. Some of the ACC.
At Miami, week 1.
A&M is tough.
A&M.
The only thing with Notre Dame, and that's a great call out, I think the only thing with Notre Dame is the inexperience at quarterback.
Yeah.
I don't have Cade Klubnik at Notre Dame. I'm going to have Carr or Minchie or however that's going to go. And they've got early tough games. A&M and Miami are 2 of their first 3 games or 2 of their first 4 games, I think.
Their first 2 games.
Those are the first 2 games. So you've got whoever the new quarterback is getting Miami. It's going to be tough. If they get by those 2, then I think you're absolutely right with Notre Dame. It's just having a Cade Klubnik and having a brand new,
you know what you got,
and having Clemson. A brand new starter. Yeah, I think that would be the one thing where I'd still lean in on Clemson. But if you think they're beating LSU and you think they're beating South Carolina, I think you're feeling like Clemson's going undefeated.
Yeah, I think there's a great chance Dabo Swinney wins his 3rd national title in his career at Clemson this year. I'm not going to spoil any picks just yet, but Clemson is absolutely a national title contender in 2025 and the clear favorite in the ACC. All right, next up is the Duke Blue Devils. Manny Diaz's first year as Duke's head coach was really successful and then basically as good as his predecessor, Mike Elko. Duke had a 9-4 record in 2024, which matched their best record in 11 years. Diaz is known as a defensive mastermind, a lot like Mike Elko. That was apparent last year. Duke, among the 25 best schools in America in defensive grade and EPA per play. The offense really lagged behind, though, last year. They were one of the 15 worst in EPA per play in the country last year. Now, they did bring in a new transfer at quarterback in Darian Mensah to help out in that department, and they're hoping for improvement on that side of the ball. But Dalton, Manny Diaz is a coach that loves to blitz. You cannot blitz unless you know you have a great secondary to hold up behind it. Duke absolutely has that.
Absolutely. You talk about masters of zone coverage, zone blitzing especially. When you talk about Duke, Chandler Rivers and Terry Moore in this secondary, this was a team, Max, they had the 9th best coverage grade in the country last season. So all that blitzing and all the scheming that happens up front, it doesn't happen without high-end execution on the back end. You look at them last year, the only team that really got them, Ole Miss got them in the bowl game because they were playing kind of shorthanded, especially offensively. But in the regular season, the only team that really got them heavy, especially in the passing game, was Cam Ward in Miami, which you go, okay, what are you going to do? You've got to be that good to beat this secondary. Otherwise, in the regular season, they didn't give up more than 28 points in any game. Manny Diaz went in there from, like you mentioned, previous defensive coach and Mike Elko. Now you got Manny Diaz coming in. It was such a smooth transition, even with an offense that was, I would call it inconsistent, especially with the quarterback play. But man, oh man, the foundation that he sets for this team and what they do on defense. Think about that. The only 2 teams they even gave up 30 points to all year were Miami and Ole Miss, and those are the two. And those are the 2 quarterbacks.
Sense.
Those are the 2 quarterbacks who won the first round of the draft.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like you have to be a first-round quarterback to tee off on this on this Duke defense. They were spectacular last year. They just need the offense to match it a little more consistently. This defense makes them a real problem in this conference.
They absolutely do. Yeah, Chandler Rivers was the highest-graded corner in the Power 4 last year. He's back. Terry Moore, the highest-graded safety in the Power 4 last year. He's back, too. So that secondary is loaded right now. The weakness is the run game right now because it really wasn't a great rushing attack for Duke last year. In fact, Duke only averaged 3.5 yards per carry. That's the fewest in the country last year. And their leading rusher, Star Thomas, he transferred to Tennessee this offseason too. Now, you did return Jaquez Moore from injury, so that is a plus. But Duke really needs significant improvement from their running backs and their offensive line too, especially considering, Dalton, you break it down right now, Darian Mensah really relies on play action. If you don't have a good run game, that play action is not going to work that well in the offense, so they need to have a much better run game next year.
Yeah, so Mensah's fun, and there's a lot of people high on his talent. Some people look at him kind of a similar build and delivery as Jordan Love. A little bit, there's a little bit of that in there, but he's coming from Tulane. he was a low-volume, high-efficiency passer because there was a lot of two tight ends and running the ball with Mekhi Hughes in that offense, and you had a lot of play action, right? So what you're talking about is a guy he had the fourth most yards per attempt in the country last year. He had a top 20 passing grade last year. It kind of came in the areas where he was strong. He was really strong. Throwing between the numbers, 90.9 passing grade, 7th best in the country. 12 of his 17 big-time throws were on play action, tied for 6th most in the country. So you're looking at, if you have a team that you want to run the football with, and he can get under center a little bit. He played a good amount under center even at Tulane. Then you're talking about a guy who can be really efficient, especially on those deep crosses. There are some throws that remind you a little bit of Jordan Love. I'm like, yeah, those are the good ones there. The biggest thing for him is obviously as a freshman playing last year, a redshirt freshman, 4.5% turnover-worthy play rate. That's a little bit high, right? And to me, he throws much better and the numbers bear this out, much better to his right than to his left. There's some footwork that he's got to work on throwing to his left that kind of hinders his accuracy a bit. So when you're talking about just rounding his game out and fixing the weaknesses in it, I have it right here, actually. On the left half of the field, he only completes 62% of his passes. On the right half, 77%.
Wow.
So it's just that there's this bit of footwork that needs to be fixed for him when throwing to his left, little over rotation. But I think when you're talking about Mensah, there's definitely a really nice foundation to work with because he's got enough arm talent to make just about any throw on the field.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch him next year. I got a massive NIL deal at Duke, and I'm excited to watch what he could do in that offense next year, try and improve that offense too. Now, the player spotlight for him is Brian Parker II on that offensive line, who really could help out protecting Darian Mensah. Split time between left tackle and right tackle in 2023. Parker really played on the right side in 2024. What's remained constant over the last 2 years, he has been a dominant pass blocker for Duke. 84.9 pass blocking grade over the last 2 years. Tied for 12th among all tackles in college football and is the best of any returning tackle in college football. He's only averaged 2.5% pressure rate allowed over the last 2 years and a 0.4% knockdown rate allowed, which is basically sacks plus hits. Both of those are top 15 marks in the country as well. He's one of the best returning pass blockers in college football, and he is critical for Darian Mensah's development. Dalton, after having an outstanding first-round pick on the offensive line in Graham Barton, Brian Parker, maybe not a first-round pick, but I think he's a future NFL offensive lineman.
Duke is starting to get this good little tradition here of solid offensive lines and offensive linemen. I remember Jacob Monk as well. He's a Green Bay Packer. I mean,
back in the day, Laken Tomlinson went to Duke.
Laken Tomlinson. Yeah. They've got this tradition now. They've gotten some good offensive linemen in recent years. Parker's another one for sure. And for as much as, like I said, Mensah likes to take those deep dropbacks, those deep play-action dropbacks, 10, 11 yards deep in the backfield and have time to make those throws kind of, again, in a similar Jordan Love kind of manner to having a pass protector like Brian Parker on that blind side. That's going to be a big asset for him.
Yeah, definitely. All right, next up is Chandler Rivers, on the defensive player spotlight, and who's a fantastic corner in that defense.
I'll tell you, he was playing previously under Mike Elko in a zone coverage-heavy defense, and that didn't change with Manny Diaz. He decided to stick around, and that was the right choice. He tied for the highest PFF grade among Power 4 cornerbacks last year with first-round pick Jahdae Barron. He was the second most valuable corner in the country behind Notre Dame's Leonard Moore. This is a master of zone coverage who uses his eyes to really get a read on quarterbacks, right, and break on the football on the outside. If you want to mess around on the outside throwing the ball, especially out to the wide side of the field against Chandler Rivers, you're going to have a problem because I guarantee you he's a step ahead of most wide receivers he's playing against. A huge reason why this Duke secondary is so elite. Obviously, we've talked about Terry Moore and the safeties also, but Chandler Rivers is really darn good. And even if he's out there on the boundary, you got to watch out for him as a blitzer too, because Manny Diaz, he's bringing blitzes from all over the place, and that includes his corners.
Absolutely. Chandler Rivers, like I said before, the highest graded corner in the Power 4 last year. He's just a phenomenal player in that secondary alongside Terry Moore, who's just a phenomenal player at safety too. Bottom line time now, Dalton. So their win total is set at 6.5 right now after a 9-4 record last year. Really a 9-3 season too. So they won 2.5 games over that last year. Are you going the over or under, and what's the bottom line for Duke?
I'm taking the over. I don't think this is a terrible schedule. There's 2 really fun games early in the season. Number 1, week 2 at home against Illinois. I think it's going to be huge. That's going to what you talk about a couple of secondaries that we've mentioned a lot. Man, oh man. I mean, that game. I don't know if that game might be 10-7 or if those 2 quarter hit. If Mensa and Altmaier are going to be struggling in that game, but they're playing Illinois week 2, and then of course. The next week after that, they are at Tulane for the return. The return of Darian Mensah at Tulane. I mean, that's just going to
Mensah against Red Sox potentially.
Oh, good call. Could be. We'll find out. That Tulane situation's wide open now, but that could be a fun one. But I'll tell you something. I like how this schedule shakes out for Duke. I think because they're Duke and they don't always have the best football reputation, people don't really believe in them. But I think this defense alone could win them 7 games, honestly, with the schedule. I'm like, the only game on this whole schedule I'm looking at, I'm like, no, is at Clemson. And you know what? If you're going to play Clemson, who leans much more towards the pass and they do the run, this secondary could give them some issues. I could see that. Sure, why not? But I think otherwise, their other 11 games, they're right in all of them. I think winning at least 7 of them should be the expectation.
So I'll say it right now. I'm not picking to make the ACC title game. This is a sleeper to make the ACC title game. I really think so. You look at that schedule. They could make the ACC title game.
The Clemson game is the only game where I'm just going to be like, okay, no. Because obviously what we think of Clemson. But you're looking at this. You look at long road trips. Cal is really the only one, and I like Duke better than Cal. Then the next longest road trip is the Tulane one. We're going to know a lot. I think week 2, how Mensa looks against Illinois. If this team, and they get them at home, if this team beats Illinois, we're gonna know something, because they can absolutely. That's gonna be a great football game, and then we're gonna know this early part of their ACC schedule really shakes out well for them. I'm with you. They're a dark horse in this conference.
Yeah.
If Mensa lives up to that hype, because he got a good chunk of change to go there, right? He could have stayed at Tulane and probably run the group of 5 this year, but Duke's got talent, and they've got. I don't know if it's just people don't want to believe in him or what, but 6.5 is probably too low.
Dude. If you're a sleeper to not win the conference, but make the conference title game, and your win total is 6.5, that's an over. I'm taking the over on Duke next year. I think this is like an 8-4 football team. Right now, I'm predicting 8-4. They can go above that too. Like I really think this team is going to be much better than a 6-6 or 7-5 football team. I think it can go above that too.
They went 9-3 last year.
Yeah.
And you could have a better if Mensa is significantly better than Malik Murphy.
And Murphy was solid last year.
Yeah, he was solid, but it was up and down. There were times when it was like, okay, this team struggles throwing the ball. If Mensa is more consistent than Murphy, I mean, they went 9-3 last year, and their offense wasn't great. 6.5 is too low. I'm with it.
Bill Dotry in the chat saying Duke is better than Clemson. I don't agree with that. He did say he's hyped to hear about Syracuse, though. I do agree with that. I'm hyped to hear about.
Well, you're always going to agree with that, yeah.
So, all right, we'll move on to the next team. Shout out Donnie in the chat. Donnie with a super chat saying we're doing God's work while he's at work. If we're previewing the ACC is doing God's work, then I guess so. But I appreciate it, Donnie. Sure, love Donnie.
Power 4 conference, man. Listen, they had 2 playoff teams last year. Good conference.
Good conference. One school who's usually very good in this conference that was a disaster last year was the Florida State Seminoles. There's no way around it. 2024 was horrendous for Florida State last year. So in 2023, they won the ACC. They had a 13-1 record overall, 13-0 going into postseason play. They should have made the playoff. So they entered 2024 as the number 10 team in the country in the preseason AP poll, but a brand new roster all around. It was unrecognizable compared to the 2023 team. They fell flat with a 2-10 record last year. That was Florida State's worst record in the last 50 years, the last half century for Florida State. Pressure is now mounting for Mike Norvell heading into year 6 in that program. And again, like the 2024 team, it's a brand new roster once again. 23 transfers coming in, new coordinators coming in too. Gus Malzahn, offensive coordinator, Tony White, defensive coordinator. Those new faces should help Florida State get to bowl eligibility in 2025, but they have a brand new quarterback in Tommy Castellanos coming in from Boston College, we talked about just before. That will determine the true ceiling of this program right now. Dawn, what is the strength of the 2025 version of Florida State?
The strength of this Seminoles team is really going to be built around Gus Malzahn and what he likes to do, right? They got a bunch of new offensive line starters. They got Tommy Castellanos, right? They're going to try to run the football a lot. I think that's what's going to happen here when you talk about this Florida State team. They need to get back to the roots because even with Jordan Travis, the goal of this team was to run the football, right? With Travis himself, with Trey Benson, with all the backs they're always used to. And last year, that just completely went away. Now, they still have Roydell Williams. They have Cam Davis. They got Gavin Sawchuk in, I believe, from Oklahoma. Is that right? I think that's
so,
right.
Yeah.
They've got a good running back room. They've got a really dynamic, at least on the ground, quarterback with Tommy Castellanos. I think when you look at the strength and what the strength of this Florida State team should be, they're going to run the hell out of the football. That's where I would be. And I know Castellanos has some talent as a passer. We'll get into that in a minute. But this is a Gus Malzahn team. And if you remember go back to the days of Auburn making a run to the title game with Nick Marshall, a former corner, as a quarterback. It's that modern triple option football, right, essentially, and you throw a little bit of the play action and all that stuff in there. That to me needs to be the strength, is what Gus Malzahn is building on the ground for this team.
Definitely. And they added some intriguing players, brand new receiving core. Deuce Robinson coming in from USC as a potential star, breakout star at receiver too. So what should be an improved offense if Tommy Castellanos can be more consistent in 2025. So a lot of people just assume Castellanos is going to be this massive upgrade over DJ Uiagalelei, and I think it will be an upgrade over DJU. However, it's worth pointing out, DJ's grade was 5 points higher than Tommy Castellanos last year. Castellanos got benched at Boston College last year for Grayson James, and he was a bit of a roller coaster at BC last year. Now he goes over to Florida State. I will say he is reunited with Gus Malzahn, who was actually his head coach at UCF in 2022 before Castellanos transferred to Boston College. He spent 1 year with Malzahn at UCF. But Dalton, you could break it down right now. Castellanos, there's some really high highs in his tape, but also a few games on the stretch where he did not look very good at all.
So let's go with the highs first of all. Last year when he was in a clean pocket, 91.2 passing grade, that's elite stuff, and he's a dynamic runner. Even with not playing the entire season last year, he had the 7th most explosive runs and 11th most missed tackles forced among all quarterbacks. Right? This is you're gonna watch him, and he's not as good, but you're gonna inevitably make the Kyler Murray comparison because he's really small and he's a really dynamic athlete with a pretty good arm. Right? So I think what you're talking about with Castellanos, and he got off to a raging hot start last year. First 4 games, 86.9 passing grade. Thereafter, 60.7. Not good enough, okay? It's accuracy, it's decision-making under pressure. It's an almost 3.3 second average time to throw. There's too often when he gets in trouble or he's under pressure or the blitz is coming, he's going to run around and play playground football. I think there is still, and even in this offense, it's going to be run heavy. There needs to be an element of throwing the ball on time. And just at times when it's 3rd and 7, I just need you to make the good enough throw. And I think that's the problem for me. Clean pocket grade was great. 29.5 passing grade under pressure last year was bottom 10 in the country. It's decision-making on the move and under pressure. And even from the pocket, his accuracy is not great. So I think there are highs. The playmaking can be fun to watch. The ability in the run game in this offense, and you talk about going from Bill O'Brien's offense to Gus Malzahn's, on paper, that should work.
Yeah,
it should work.
It's a better fit for him.
Because Malzahn's always had these mobile, option-heavy run-in quarterbacks, right? That should work, but there has to be a lack of just – it's an erratic way that he throws the football a lot of times, especially when he breaks a pocket.
One guy who should help him out a lot in that offense is Deuce Robinson, mentioned before, transferring in from USC. He is a massive, massive receiver at 6'6", 222 pounds, very strong hands, former 5-star recruit, actually was recruited as a tight end coming out of high school, but has played more receiver for USC and now at Florida State. He's only dropped 1 of his 25 catchable targets this past year at USC. Very strong athlete. He could be a matchup nightmare for defenses as Florida State's new X-receiver, kind of in the mold a little bit of like a Johnny Wilson type of player at Florida State. I think Deuce Robinson was underutilized at USC in his career. he could be a breakout star for Florida State this year.
And I think exactly the type of player that Castellanos didn't have at Boston College, right? I mean, there's not many out there that is 6'6" and 220. I think Johnny Wilson's a great call when you talk about a guy that obviously Florida State fans are familiar with. But somebody who in those obvious passing situations, because that's where I have the most questions about Florida State, somebody who they can go to in those spots, like it was with Wilson or even Keon Coleman the year before, when it was, okay, at least if these guys are left one-on-one, just chuck him something, see what happens, right? I think Deuce Robinson is definitely the guy that you're looking for in those situations.
But Dalton, the star of the entire team is a transfer coming in at cornerback in Jeremiah Wilson.
This is a good one, man. You talk about, look, Houston didn't have a whole lot of bright spots last year, but Jeremiah Wilson was maybe the number one bright spot for them. I mean, you want speed outside at corner. Yeah. That's what sticks out to me. He's a little bit undersized, 5'10", 185, but blazing speed, even when he's beat by a step, the recovery speed to catch up to just about anybody, and he's a ball hawk. 4 interceptions last year, 46.7 passer rating when targeted. You're getting down to that spike in the football range when you're starting to get down in that territory. But look, top 10 corner for us in the country. He's got really, really good feet. I think that's what sticks out to me most. One of those undersized corners who makes up for it with his agility, with his speed, with his footwork downfield. Jeremiah Wilson. And look, I really like in this defense generally, Florida State likes to play a lot of man-to-man coverage. Let's see it. Let's see him go at it with some of these bigger receivers, and he's going to be in the spotlight against certain teams here in the ACC, but Jeremiah Wilson's really good on the outside. One of the best transfers in the entire country, honestly.
Yeah, I think maybe the best corner that transferred this offseason. I believe he's the only corner in my top 10 that transferred. But yeah, Jeremiah Wilson, 87 PFF grade last year, 9th among all corners in college football. Great player Florida State got in the portal. So both their offensive player and defensive player spotlight and their quarterback are transfers coming into that program right now, which they need considering we went 2-10 last year. Dawn, the sportsbooks think it's going to be a big bounce back for Florida State. They have a win total set at 7.5 right now. Are you going over or under? What is the bottom line for Florida State? And really, what's the minimum for Mike Norvell in year 6?
You got to make a bowl game.
Yeah.
They have to make a bowl game. If they don't make a bowl game, we're going to ask big questions. I see 4 or 5 games here, and I go, they still should win at least with their talent. Now, they went 2-10 last year.
Yeah.
Going from 2 to 8, even for a program like Florida State, not easy.
Yeah.
Right? And you're playing Alabama week 1. You're playing Clemson.
Talking a lot of smack to Alabama right now, Castellanos.
You're going to Florida, and right now Florida's probably better than them, at least from what we saw last year, obviously, right? I think I'm gonna play it safe and go under. Playing Miami also, as always, right? I'm gonna play it safe and go under. I'm not as sure on this offense. There's obviously been a lot of noise coming from the locker room and the quarterback in particular.
Yeah.
That can be risky. That can be really risky.
Against Alabama, yeah, it's very risky.
Well, it's certainly risky week 1 against Alabama, that's for sure. I'm going to wait and see. I'm going to go under the 7.5. I could absolutely see this. There's 4 or 5 games here where I go, if they don't win any of those 4 or 5 games, we have a real problem. Mm-hmm. Malzahn is, to me, Malzahn's the ray of hope. He's going to be an offense coordinator now. I don't know if it's a Chip Kelly situation necessarily where it's like, okay, go down and be an elite OC and that's fine. But I like the ground game. I like the potential there is with Castellanos and Roydell Williams and what they could get going in the new offensive line and all that. I want to see it before I call them out to win 8 or more. I'm going to go under, and I think they need to make a bowl game. That's the best way I can put that. They have to make a bowl game. We're going to ask all of the huge questions with Florida State.
I'm looking at the schedule right now. They could start 6-2. I think that's possible for them, but I'm still going under. I think Florida State. 7.5 is a big win total after going 2-10 last year. I get it. The year before they were outstanding, and the year before that they were pretty good too. But there's so much newness on this roster right now. I'm gonna go under. I think it's more of like a 7-5 football team probably.
I'm curious to see what they look like week 1. Week 1 is fun because what we did see with the Bama, I know we'll get into the preview in a month, but what we did see with Bama is that type of running style. It's kind of the one thing. Remember the Oklahoma game and even the Vandy game. That sort of option-based running style caused a lot of problems for Alabama last year. It'll still be a fun matchup if Malzahn has this team ready to roll.
You almost just wish they had they play East Texas A&M and Kent State after that. You wish they flipped that.
Yeah,
just get some confidence in the program, man.
Alabama week 1 is
after
a task.
After a 2-10 season is like.
But let's see if they're up to it because it's also you don't get any tape on it. It's just going to be new and you're kind of guessing based on what Malzahn's done at Auburn and UCF and everywhere else that he's been.
Ty Simpson's first start too. You never know.
Also that, it's at home. It's at Florida State. They're going to be hyped up, but they need obviously a much better season than 2-10.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good call right there. Is it not? Oh, it is at Florida State. You're right. I thought it was a neutral site game.
It's at Florida State.
I thought it was a neutral site game for a second. All right. Yeah, Florida State. I don't think they're going to compete for ACC title or playoff spot like they were in the past, but I think 7-5 is still possible for that program right now. All right, next up is the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Brent Key has now gone 7-6 in both of his full seasons as Georgia Tech's head coach. That's the first time the Yellow Jackets have had back-to-back winning seasons in a decade for that program. Georgia Tech's offense was the biggest reason for their success last year, one of the 25 most efficient in the country in terms of EPA per play. The defense did lag behind as it struggled really to defend opposing passing games, and really, Dalton, the 2025 version of Georgia Tech is kind of the same with a strong offense, but some defensive questions too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think what you look at with Georgia Tech, for me, and I know they've got some big name receivers. They lost Eric Singleton, but they brought in Eric Rivers from FIU, and you have Malik Rutherford, who's obviously a speed threat. But I think the engine of this team, to me, always goes back to Haynes King and Jamal Haynes in the backfield with this run game. When they get this option game going and they get this big, powerful offensive line leaning on you, we saw they can pull off upsets. They're so physical offensively. They're such a tough out, right? At the time when they were number 10 in the country, it was a big upset over Florida State, right? They were one of the few teams one of just two teams that beat Miami and Cam Ward last year because they could control the game. I mean, what did they?
Syracuse is the other one, by the way. I just want to point
Syracuse, of course they were. Different style though. That's not what we'll get there. We'll get to Kyle McCord and all that later. When you look at the way they played Georgia, what that game? It was 6 overtimes?
Yeah.
They
took it on the wire.
They were physically, they can play with teams like that, with Georgia, with defensive lines like Miami. That's what you're looking at with this Georgia Tech team. Ball control, they want to hold the football for 40 minutes of the game, 40 out of the 60 minutes. Haynes King is back. Jamal Haynes is back. That's the biggest reason of success for me. They can run the football and they can control the ball game.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the biggest strength of the team. Haynes King's top 5 quarterback in the conference. Jamal Haynes is top 10 running back in the nation. And a pretty good receiving core, even after losing a top 5 receiver in Eric Singleton Jr. Pass defense, though, really struggled. Last year, they were 116th in pass rush grade and 106th in coverage grade. And they lost 3 of their 4 pressure leaders from last year and their best defensive back in cornerback Warren Burrell, too. So a pass defense that really struggled, was easily outside the top 100 in pass defense last year. And they lost a lot of key players from that pass defense. I'm worried about how they're going to defend opposing passing games next year.
I absolutely agree. I think last year it was funny because I remember doing this preview last year, and we came into it going, boy, it's their run defense. They got a pretty good secondary, and their run defense is a problem. Then we got to the season, and their run defense was pretty darn good, and the secondary fell apart. And in some of those higher scoring games, that's why they needed to control the clock so much and control the passing game. And actually, I should say control the clock with their own run game, is because they were getting shredded on the back end last year. Even though the run defense was pretty good, secondary just didn't execute the way it did the year before.
Tell me more about Haynes King, who is easily, I think, a top 5 quarterback in this conference.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Haynes King, what jumps out at you, almost like we had with Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt in the SEC preview. It's just gritty, man.
Yeah.
Hey, it's just so darn tough. Even last year, he played a lot of last year with a bad shoulder, and it was even the Miami game, he couldn't throw. They were putting, was it Aaron Philo they were throwing out there? When they had to throw the ball, they were taking Haynes King off the field at one point. But the toughness that he continued to play with, continued to run the football with, all the way through, like I said, the Georgia game, and barely losing that game, and that got wild. But I think what you get with Haynes King, you get a dynamic, explosive running threat in the option game. Last year, what I wanted to see last year coming into the year was better ball security. Responded with the lowest turnover-worthy play rate in the country, 1.1%. So if you've got a quarterback that's leading the nation in turnover-worthy play rate and is a dynamic runner and a dynamic rushing offense, you would talk about ball control.
Yeah.
That's what you're getting with Haynes King, and he still throws a pretty nice deep ball as well, right? Now, again, if he's fully healthy, that's where you'll see that more often. I think he's going to have to make an adjustment with Eric Rivers instead of Eric Singleton, but this is what this Georgia Tech team wants to be. Ball control, run the ball, vertical playmakers. The two things I see with Haynes King that have been a struggle. One, under pressure in the pocket, right? 41.1 passing grade under pressure. Last 2 years, tries to throw off platform too much. Stay on your feet, step into the throw, stare down the barrel, make throws downfield, right? Under pressure. Two, Red zone. Not great in the red zone over the last 2 years. 84th in the country in red zone passing grade. It's for him, he's more of a vertical passer than a horizontal one. So when those windows get tight, you got the back of the end zone, you're down there on the 10-yard line. Those are the throws he struggles with a little bit. If he can get a little bit better in the red zone and at times, because they so often they finish drives on the ground, at times when he needs to finish drives with his arm, let's finish drives. Let's get 7s instead of 3s. If it's 3rd and goal from the 8, I need you to zip one in there, right? Those are the throws I'd like to see him improve on. But he's the right quarterback for this offense.
Absolutely. And a guy who really makes it a dangerous ground game, dangerous read option attack at Georgia Tech is the other Jamal Haynes. Jamal Haynes. What do you call it, the law firm at Georgia
Haynes
Tech?
And Haynes.
Haynes and Haynes.
We got one more year of Haynes and Haynes.
I love that. Jamal Haynes, a top 10 running back in the country for us. He's been one of the most productive running backs in America over the last 2 years. Over 2,000 rushing yards over the last 2 years, is first among all returning running backs in the Power 4. Over 1,100 yards after contact over the last 2 years, is fourth among returning Power 4 running backs. He also has 856 rushing yards before contact over the last 2 years, which is the most of any Power 4 running back. And usually, Dalton, that's an offensive line stat. But it's worth pointing out, Georgia Tech has a kind of average offensive line grades over the last 2 years. So in my opinion, that before contact stat is really about how quick, how agile he is, that defenders can't even get a hand on this guy. Jamal Haynes, I think, is right now a top 10 running back in the country and easily a guy to know for the NFL draft.
And his vision in a very diverse run scheme to know where he's going. That's a big thing there too. And you just love it with this offense. And we talk about a lot why it's so darn hard to play linebacker, especially in college football nowadays. When you got this offense at any time, you can hand it to Jamal Haynes. Haynes King can keep it.
Yep.
And then you got Malik Rutherford flying all over the place, whether it's jet sweeps or bubbles or what anything.
And Eric Rivers is a great receiver.
And Eric Rivers is going to help them a lot too. It's a really good replacement for Singleton. But to me, when I look at King and Haynes and Rutherford in the three-headed monster this running game is, it's a real problem.
Who is the star run defender, I should say, for Georgia Tech?
Let's go on the inside with a defensive tackle, Jordan Vandenberg, who transferred in from Penn State last year, and he's an athlete, man. He's switched 6'3", 305. He is twitchy on the inside, 99th percentile PFF game athleticism score, 75.5 PFF grade last year. Very, very good as a run defender. You talk about, again, this run defense getting a lot better last year than I thought it would be. We've talked about the secondary as a weakness, but Vandenberg's a big reason this run defense got better. And I think there's enough potential and enough twitch as a pass rusher that he can improve that as this season goes on. But I think last year was about getting a legitimate amount of reps on the inside there. Jordan Vandenberg, big number 99 in there, he's a guy to watch on the inside. I just think he's got the right amount of athleticism for that three technique role in there. He's going to be a problem inside.
Yeah, former Penn State player and a former JUCO product too. So really cool to see his career arc as one of the best run defenders now in the ACC. Dawn, the win total, like Florida State, is set at 7.5 for Georgia Tech right now. You going over or under that win total? What's the bottom line for the Yellow Jackets?
I mean, they're good. Especially if if the shoulder is healthy all this year, Georgia Tech is good. It's tough because you've got Clemson and you've got the Georgia game, which is always tough. There's a lot of 50-50. You know what? We're going to learn a lot. And I think it's another one. Week 1 at Colorado. What a fun game. What a fun game. That's a huge game. I mean, they're playing Virginia Tech. They're at Duke. They went 6-6 or 7-5 last year, was it?
Yeah, they've gone 7-6 in back-to-back years now.
But I think regular season they were 7-5.
7-5, yeah.
I'll take one more win. The experience on this offense, and the only thing that worries me is there's 2 games against Clemson and against Georgia that are going to be hard to get over the hump there. But, again, the ACC is very, very open. I'll take them over. I could get them to 8 or 9. I'm in on that. I mean, I think, there's some people that like them as a dark horse with their offense, another dark horse ACC title game. Because really, we feel great about – we're going to do this a lot today. We feel great about Clemson, right?
Yeah.
Who's the second team? Right. There's probably 5 or 6 we could convince ourselves of, and Georgia.
These next 2 will be up. Probably the next 2. I would say.
Those 2 also that we're getting to next. But I think Georgia Tech is on that. When you talk about teams capable of finishing second in the ACC, I think Georgia Tech's at least.
Yeah, they're in that Duke tier. I would say
absolutely. They're at least on the list.
Yeah.
I'll take them over 7.5. I'll give them 8 or 9.
Because I think we've agreed on every single one so far, I'm going to go under. I was on the fence with this one. I'll go under just to be different here because I don't want to keep repeating over and over the same ones. But I think 7-5 is like almost not the floor, but I think that's around where I think they could be this year. They have tough games at Colorado, Clemson. Virginia Tech could be an interesting one. At Duke's tough. At NC State is tough. Obviously, Georgia at the end of the year is tough too. So I'll go under and say 7-5. But I do think there's a chance to go over. If we didn't even talk about it yet, the offensive line is going to be a little bit better. That's the only real question I have in that offense right now. And the defense is going to be a lot better too. The pass defense. So I think those are the two reasons why I'm going under. But I think there's a lot of talent offensively for them to be a dark horse ACC team next year. All right, next up is the Louisville Cardinals. Jeff Brom has been fantastic throughout his 2 years as Louisville's head coach so far. So he led Louisville to their first ever ACC title game in 2023, followed it up last year with a 9-4 record and a thrilling Sun Bowl victory over Washington. The Cardinals have now been 19-8 over the last 2 years, which is their best 2-year stretch in a decade, back when Teddy Bridgewater was their quarterback. Louisville has similar expectations in 2025 with what should be an elite ground game headlined by two star sophomores in Isaac Brown and Duke Watson. And also, they have a really solid passing attack probably with Miller Moss coming in at quarterback. They have another strong front seven on defense, but need new faces in the secondary to step up. But Dalton, this offense has some real potential.
You get some themes going here because Jeff Brom is quietly one of the best play callers in the country. Every year he gets another transfer quarterback, and he's got another one there, right? We've already done this with Jack Plummer. Mm-hmm. Then we did it even more so with Tyler Shuck. Now we're going to do it with Miller Moss, who I love as a fit in this system. And I'll tell you what, you mentioned this running back room, Isaac Brown and Duke Watson. Oh, boy. These two guys are explosive. Watson breaks tackles like crazy. Brown can take off on you on any play. He's got really good vision and speed. This is an offense. And then you mentioned Chris Bell and Colin Lacey. And they didn't get as much out of Colin Lacey that they thought they were last year.
He was banged up last year.
He was banged up. And Colin Lacey's a really good player. Chris Bell is really good. I've seen even some draft scouts that are really starting to like Chris Bell. This offense got weapons, man, and it's just going to be a matter of Miller Moss coming in and adjusting to the system. But we've seen two quarterbacks do it already. Jeff Brom is the quietest quarterback whisperer in the country, I think.
And I know Miller Moss got benched last year. I'm higher on Miller Moss going into the year than I was on Tyler Shuck going into last year. Obviously, he was phenomenal last year, and I was higher on him than before too with the other quarterbacks that Louisville had too. So
Miller Moss is, and we're going to do this more in a second, but Miller Moss is like a coach's best friend, man.
And I think he fits this offense perfectly.
Oh, it's perfect. Yeah. Hey, so, Jeff Brom's going to love him.
And my number 4 running back unit in the country, headlined by a star I'll talk about in just a second. Now, the weakness, the only real question on this offense is the offensive line. Louisville had a 70.3 offensive line grade last year, which was 55th in the country. It's about average in the nation. But they lost 4 starters from that unit, and they brought in 2 starters in the transfer portal at tackle, but each of them had below a 55 PFF grade in 2024. So the only question I have really offensively for Louisville is can that offensive line hold up? Because Miller Moss, Dawn, as we know, is not the most mobile quarterback.
Well, here's a fun stat for Miller Moss, though, because of the way he operates, the cerebral manner in which he operates in the quick release and his ability to even throw through pressure. Miller Moss had the lowest pressure to sack rate of any Power 4 quarterback in the country last year because USC's offensive line wasn't great for him in front of him last year,
pretty
right?
Bad, yeah.
It was rough up there in the Big Ten, so it's not like it's something Miller Moss isn't used to, but the way that he plays the game, it's exactly how a coach wants a quarterback to play the game. He's on time, he's accurate, he reads defenses, and the only thing I'd say about him is he just doesn't have insane tools, right? But he stands firm in the pocket. 68 passing grade under pressure, 7th best in the country last year. I'm really, as long as they're not like atrocious, right? If their offensive line, if their pass protection is average, I'm really not worried about Miller Moss when it comes to that because he gets rid of the ball quickly and he really doesn't make mistakes. That's what I like with Moss. Was there, here and there, yeah, but I think what you talk about with Moss is there is a lower ceiling because he doesn't have anything near an A-plus arm. He doesn't have A-plus mobility, right? 9 of his 12 turnover-worthy plays, 7 of 9 sacks he took were beyond 2.5 seconds. He's going to work on time and within the offense with whatever Brom creates for him. I think that's especially where it'll be different from Tyler Shuck. Shuck's got a pretty darn good arm, and he's really going to push the ball, especially down the sidelines. I think with Moss, this offense is going to be a little more horizontal. You're going to get those deep overs, some of those touch throws, and they're going to control the intermediate parts. Now, you want to chuck a deep ball here and there just to keep them honest, but it's going to look a little bit different. But Brom is the master of making adjustments to his quarterback, because even Jack Plummer the year before was a little bit different than Shuck, right? So the offense schematically, I think, will be a little more horizontal, but with this run game and with what they could get into in these play-action concepts, I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Moss, if there's any quarterback who could handle transferring, adjusting to a new system, making the right throws, even especially early in the season, I think he can handle it. Mentally, he's as good as any quarterback in the country.
Yeah, and we actually interviewed Miller Moss last year, early on in the season, while he was at USC, and one of my favorite answers I heard from Miller Moss and why I think this guy's a coach's best friend. I asked him, what's the best play you've made in your career? And that was after the LSU game, where he made a lot of dimes in that game to win that game for USC. He told me it was in the bowl game, when he was starting in the bowl game the year before, as basically a tryout game to be USC starting quarterback after that. Because really, remember, back then the rumors were Lincoln Riley was trying to get Will Howard in that program, right? In that bowl game, on one of the first drives of the game, I believe it was like a 2nd and 8, he was about to get sacked, and like that stat on pressure sack conversion rate, he threw it out of bounds. And he said that was a huge play for that game, because third down, we picked up the first down, so instead of like a 3rd and 15 or longer with a sack, he kept it like 3rd and 6. They converted the first down, they scored a touchdown, and they got rolling after that. His favorite play of his career was a pass he threw to the coach in the sideline. That just kind of shows the mentality that Miller Moss has. I think Jeff Brom is going to love this guy in his offense next year, and I think he's a perfect fit for it. And I think he kind of did dirty a little bit at USC last year.
He doesn't beat himself, and if you want, and I know it's not a boatload of games we're talking about, but in the last 3 years, he's only had one game where his passing grade was below 60. He doesn't beat. Maybe he's not always spectacular. He's not always blowing you away, but Miller Moss doesn't beat himself, and I think Brom's going to love that.
One guy who is spectacular is his running back, Isaac Brown. Isaac Brown, coming out of high school, was not even a top 40 running back recruit out of high school. Former 3-star, he disproved that immediately and is now the number 2 running back in America heading into his true sophomore year. Only one above him, Jeremiah Love, a top 5 player in the country. But Isaac Brown, 1,168 rushing yards as a true freshman, the most of any running back returning to the Power 4. He also led the Power 4 with 7.2 yards per carry. Running backs that were in the NFL now or returning to college football, all of them, most yards per carry among all Power 4 running backs. He is smaller. He's 5'9", 190 pounds, but he makes up for it with game-breaking speed and quickness. This guy is a rising superstar in college football.
Absolutely, and I think he could do even more as a receiver this year. And look, you mentioned it too, Duke Watson complimenting him. I don't think Brown is going to have to take some absurd amount of carries, an Ashton Jeanty level of carries, because you've got Watson and you've got what should be a really solid passing game to complement him. He's an explosive player. I mean, he was the one guy on the ground that really, when Louisville beat Clemson last year at Clemson, he took the game over. I mean, if he gets a crease, good luck. This kid is really, really good.
This Watson and Brown duo is like the duo they had right before, which are Jawar Jordan and Isaac Rendo, where it's the thunder and lightning a little bit.
I wouldn't be shocked if it's better.
I think it will be better.
I mean,
and those are 2 great players they had, Jawar Jordan and Isaac Rendo.
Yeah, the 2 NFL players, right? I mean, you're talking about 2 guys that could make a huge difference in this. It's actually they're the 2 guys that when I think about Clemson having to go to Louisville on a Friday night, I go, you better find it, because they never found it in run defense last year, Clemson. That was the one game. That was probably the one game more than any other game all season where I looked at Clemson's defense. I went, whoa, what's wrong here? Even the Georgia game early on, that was really just their offense not being able to score. But these 2 guys are difference makers, both of them.
So Ultimate Goatee in the chat makes a good call out here. Duke Watson did lead the country with 8.9 yards per carry, but he didn't meet the required carry minimum to actually lead the country. So really, I believe he lowered to like 50 attempts. Duke Watson did lead the country in yards per carry. On a regular minimum, though, Isaac Brown had the most yards per carry in the Power 4. So you have 2 guys who are averaging over 7 yards per carry in that backfield, both of them true freshmen last year. This is a star-studded backfield.
Behind a relatively average offensive line.
Yeah.
Good luck. They got balance, man.
Yep.
If that O-line keeps it together, Louisville's got balance. They're going to be fun.
Who is the star defensive player for Louisville?
You want to talk about stopping the run? Let's go to their big middle linebacker, 6'3", 235-pound Stanquan Clark. This is like an old-school, heavy-handed, hard-hitting Mike linebacker, 88.8 run defense grade, 10th best in the country. Getting better in coverage. We're working on that a little bit. Well, when you talk about one of those thumpers in the middle that you want to stop the run, Stanquan Clark is your guy. He watching him felt like going back in time a little bit to me. He's an old school middle linebacker that you run between the tackles, you better get a hand on him. Don't give him a free shot at your running back because he's coming to hit people, man. I'm telling you, he's one of the best run defenders in the country.
All right, bottom line time for the Louisville Cardinals. Win total set at 8.5 right now. Is this a contender to win the ACC next year, and are you going over or under that win total? I'm going over. I'll say it right now.
Good number.
I think Louisville is going to be a really good team next year. It's again, I think 9-3 is possible. I think this is a team that could be playing in the ACC title game for the second time in 3 years.
Are they only playing? They're only playing 4 road games. Am I seeing this right? Pitt, Miami, Virginia Tech, SMU. They're only playing 4 road games, and they don't have any West Coast games. Oh boy. This can hit. If Miller Moss hits for them and Braum gets him playing like he did with Plummer and Shuck, this team's going to be a problem.
I think they're going to start 8-1.
They very well could. 8-1. What do you got? Them losing the Miami game?
Yeah.
Even then,
they could beat Miami too.
They could beat Miami. Why not? Look how close they played them last year, even with Cam Ward.
Yeah.
If they could make a stop in that game, they might have won that game. We were there.
This could be a 11-1.
I'll take the
team.
over. I haven't officially decided yet.
Neither have I.
They might be my second team. They might be playing Clemson in the ACC title game.
Yeah.
I haven't decided. I got to go through it and do some sort of simulation and figure it out. But I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna go at least 9 wins for Louisville.
Yep. Yeah, I think Miller Moss, if he could reach the same highs that Tyler Shuck did under Jeff Braum, which I know Shuck is now going to be an NFL starting quarterback, but I think it's possible, really, with how good I think Miller Moss could be in that offense. Louisville could once again play in the ACC.
I just need their secondary to be better. That's what I really need is if the secondary can execute like they did in 23, which is a year where they finished second in the ACC, it can happen. They might. I'm still thinking about it, but they're on the list of teams for me that they might be the second team in the ACC title game for me.
The team
thinking about it.
The team they're directly competing with probably for that title is up next year in the Miami Hurricanes. Miami had his best year in 7 years last year, but 2024 will still feel like one that got away from the Hurricanes. They had easily the best offense in the country in terms of EPA per play, and a number 1 overall pick at quarterback in Cam Ward, but Miami still lost 3 games and missed out on both the ACC title game and the college football playoff. It felt a lot like Dalton, those LSU teams with Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., the best offense in the country. Got let down by the defense, though, because Miami was 67th in coverage grade last year. In some of their bigger games, they really struggled even more than that, too. Ward, of course, now the Titans, but Miami did find as good of a replacement as you could have in the portal by bringing in Carson Beck, our number 3 quarterback in the country. He has a 90.9 PFF grade over the last 2 years, the second best of any returning quarterback in college football. If they could find some viable weapons for him to throw to and really improve that secondary, Miami, once again, can be a top contender in the ACC. Dalton, what is the strength of this Hurricane team, though?
I think what you really look at, and you could argue Carson Beck is a strength. I know there's a lot of people that like to criticize him, but he's still pretty good. But really the biggest strength of this Miami team, you've got a really good offensive line and a really good defensive line. You've got stars like Francis Mauanoa, right tackle for him on the offensive side. You've got Reuben Bain Jr. and a pretty loaded defensive line. They even lost a couple pieces. They're still pretty loaded on the defensive line, too. This is a Miami team that Mario Cristobal is building through the trenches, and I think that's where they were still extremely good there last year, right? The pass protection with Cam Ward, back there, and he had all day to throw it a lot of times. The defensive line with this pass rush, a 4-man rush. You mentioned it. They lost regular season 10-2. They lost to Georgia Tech because they only had the ball for like 19 minutes.
Yeah. And
they lost to Syracuse because Kyle McCord outdueled them, and I figured I'd just say it before you did. It's just. It's everything else around the trenches, I think, that we have questions on. But O-line and D-line, I think they can play with just about any team in the country.
So we're big fans of Carson Beck here on this show. But I will say the one thing Carson Beck is, he is a guy, a lot like, I would say, Jared Goff in the NFL, you need a great supporting cast for them. Now, they do have a top 10 offensive line in the country, like Dalton said. Georgia also had a great offensive line last year. Why Beck had a bit of a down year, actually a big down year compared to what he was in 2023, was the weaponry at Georgia. And the question mark I have for Miami right now, are the weapons there for Carson Beck to bounce back with Miami? So his PFF grade fell by more than 10 points because Georgia's receiving core was a well below average receiving core. They lost Brock Bowers, they lost Lyle McConkey. They didn't really replace him that well either. The Hurricanes lost their top 6 pass catchers from last year's team. They're hoping that sophomores like Josiah Trader and Elijah Lofton can step up. We'll also bring in transfers like CJ Daniels and Tony Johnson, hoping they can be better than they were at their previous schools too. But that's the one question mark, Dawn, is that why Beck had a down year last year was the weaponry when was way worse at Georgia. Will the weaponry be there for him at Miami now for him to be better?
Well, it needs to be, because you hit it right on the head. When Beck is clean and the situation is ideal and he's protected and the weapons are solid, he will stand in the pocket and he will make the throws. He's one of the most decisive throwers in the country, consistently low average time to throw, 90.9 clean pocket passing grade last year, still 8th best in the country. If you give Carson Beck the ideal conditions to work with, he's going to make good things happen, and he can see the field very well. The problem is, last year, you mentioned one thing. Well, Georgia's offensive line was good inside. Tackle's a little shakier.
Yeah.
30.6 passing grade under pressure. He doesn't move much. He's going to stand in the pocket. He's not going to improvise much. If you move Carson Beck off his spot, he's going to have issues. And then last year, what started to happen was, because the weapons were lacking, he started to force it a little bit. Only 6 Power 4 quarterbacks had 20 turnover-worthy plays last year. He was one of them. Carson Beck is the type of guy. Jared Goff's got a little of this, actually, now that you mentioned the name. Situations aren't ideal. Feeling the heat, Trying to force it, speed it up. First half of the Alabama game is the one we all think about, right? Mm-hmm. You just start forcing things that aren't there. Why? Because he doesn't have a ton of answers. So when conditions are ideal, if those guys on the outside can get open, if they really do have a top 10 offensive line in the country and Malinois a top 15 pick and all that stuff, Beck can be really, really good for him. But he's very, very dependent, right? Just like Jared Goff, very dependent. He's going to be a statue. Got to keep him clean. Got to get open for him, and he will do his job. If all of those conditions are met, he will do his job.
One guy who should help him out a lot in that department is Francis Malinois, who has been starting at right tackle for Miami since his true freshman year. Former 5-star recruit, got a lot better as a pass blocker last year as a sophomore. He only allowed 2 combined sacks and hits on 534 pass blocking snaps. He's actually the only tackle in America with 2 or fewer knockdowns allowed on over 500 pass blocking snaps. Also has a 71.4 run blocking grade over the last 2 years. That's tied for 4th among all ACC tackles. Still needs to get a little more refined in his game, but he could be a top 15 pick in the 2026 NFL draft, a lot like Dalton, the star defensive player for Miami too.
No, absolutely. I mean, you talk about a potential top 10 to 15 talent, Ruben Bain Jr. He had an early injury last year, and then he came back in the second half and really showed you what he's made of. But the last 2 years, 73 pressures, 3rd among Power 4 edge defenders coming back to college football, just under a 17% pass rush win rate, which is fantastic and big enough. And he's always been this, even when I saw him walking on as a true freshman, Ruben Bain, he's just stronger beyond his years. Like, even the same way we talk about Peter Woods at Clemson, you just go, this is a grown man. And you can put him down inside, reduce him into a defensive tackle, line him up over the tackle. You can put him off the edge. He's a good pass rusher. Just a strong, powerful player that, in the same way that we talked about Peter Woods, I think gives you an incredibly high floor for what he can do both in the run game and the pass game, and he's getting even better as a pass rusher as time goes on. Ruben Bain is the guy to watch for Miami's defense and one of the prime guys to watch for next year's draft as well.
He could be a top 10 to 15 pick, I think, in the NFL draft. All right, Dalton, bottom line for Miami, is this a top contender to win the ACC? Win total is set at 9.5 right now. So basically, will they have the same record as they did last year, even without Cam Ward, or will they go a little bit worse this year?
That logic there that you just said tells me I'm going under, because they went 10-2 with, I would argue, the best offense in the country.
It was, in terms of EP, by easily the best in the country in EP play.
They went 10-2 with the best offense in the country and found a way to not make the playoff. I'm going to go under because there's just I feel more variability with this team. They brought in some solid transfers in the secondary. I won't say superstars by any means.
They do avoid Clemson, which is big.
Let's not forget either, and I like Mark Fletcher, but let's not forget either, they lost Damian Martinez too. And Martinez, what he did in a run scheme that's not particularly complicated. Look, we're going to find out. Hey, you want to find out about Carson Beck? Week 1, you got Notre Dame's secondary coming to town. You got Leonard Moore and those guys locking those guys up man to man. You want to find out if guys are going to get open and he's going to force throws? That's where you're going to find it. Playing Notre Dame, you're playing the Gators, you're playing Louisville at SMU. I'm gonna go under. I think the idea being that Carson Beck is not Cam Ward, and they're gonna have to find ways, especially on defense, to win games other than just outscoring people every week. I'll go under. They are a contender. They're a contender to be in second place, but to call them out to win 10 games, the same if not more than last year, I think is a tough task.
Yeah.
Possible, sure. If Beck is 2023 Carson Beck, and he's in the same range as Cam Ward and the secondary is better, sure, it's possible.
A lot of their tough games are at home, which is big. Like Florida.
It's not the most dangerous home field.
I know it's not, but it's not. I know it's not, but
it's not great. When they played Louisville, I think 2 years ago at home, and it looked like 2/3 of the place was red.
Yeah, Louisville's at Miami this year. Florida's at Miami this year.
I just have
Notre Dame's at Miami this year.
I just think if you were gun to my head telling me, I think the bet I would say is they're more likely to win less games with Cam Ward gone. Even though I really like the fact that they added Carson Beck.
Yeah, I'll go under too. It's tough. It's really tough because I think there's a chance they go 10-2, but I'll go under as a safe bet because I think they obviously downgraded that offense.
I think they would at that point they'd have to either win week 1 or they got to beat the Gators.
Listen, if they can find some weaponry though and keep Carson Beck upright, he could perform. Maybe not as well as Cam Ward, but he could be one of the top quarterbacks in the country. So I think it's possible they can go 10-2, but yes, it would be tough for them next year to do that without Cam Ward and all their weapons they lost too. All right, next up is the North Carolina Tar Heels. So with Drake May as their quarterback, they had a 17-10 record, but they struggled when he left though with a 6-7 record this past season. North Carolina was forced to start 3 different quarterbacks last year, which led to them being 102nd in passing grade as a team. Their legendary coach, Mac Brown, he was let go before the Fenway Bowl, and North Carolina replaced him with the biggest legend ever in football history in Bill Belichick, 6-time Super Bowl champion, widely regarded as the greatest coach in NFL history. He is now 73 years old. He will now be coaching in the college ranks for the first time in his career. And he and the Tar Heels were really busy in the transfer portal. They added 13 projected starters, including a new quarterback in Gio Lopez. So, Dalton, the biggest strength is quite literally Bill Belichick.
Yeah, this is the biggest mystery in college football. It's kind of like what we had with Colorado a couple of years ago when that was first starting, where you go, okay, we've got a legendary name, at least, as the head coach, right? And Belichick, obviously, with a much better coaching resume than Coach Prime had coming into it. But a team full of transfers that we know almost nothing about. So the idea, at least on the surface, before we see anything happen, is, okay, he's Bill Belichick. He gets his teams to execute at a high level, and no matter who's on the field, his teams are going to execute and give him a chance to win, right? I think that's the idea. 6-time Super Bowl winner, obviously had even with Tom Brady, a lot of those Patriot teams playing maybe even better than their talent level was. That's the idea right now, is that he's Bill Belichick. And if he can take the greatest coach in NFL history thing down with him to college, then this could be a lot of fun because so often it really can be in college just about how well these kids are coached.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, greatest X's and O's coach of all time, I would say. 6 Super Bowls, second most wins of all time with 333 right now. Again, it's a gamble because he's never coached in college football before, and he's 73 years old now. But it's a worthy gamble, I think, for North Carolina. Now, the weakness is, in my opinion, the skill position players because they lost a first-round running back in Amarian Hampton. He was their leading rusher and their third leading receiver. They lost their top 2 pass catchers in J.J. Jones and John Copenhaver. And all of North Carolina's replacements are basically in-house players too, aside from Isaiah Johnson, who only had 276 receiving yards last year at Michigan State. So skill position players are a big question mark right now, and you have a new quarterback now, Dalton and Gio Lopez.
Yeah, lost Bryson Nesbitt, who was a big-time playmaker for him, too. So I think you're talking about it. Again, this is one of the biggest mysteries in college football. We've seen this now when teams get new coaches, not even just a guy like Belichick, where so many transfers and so many guys just looking for opportunity. We don't know who's going to emerge. But I can tell you about a guy who started most of last year at South Alabama, and Gio Lopez. Look, he was pretty solid as a redshirt freshman last year. Lefty passer who can throw the ball vertically. He's a tough player, fourth best rushing grade in the country at 86.1 last year. And I think what you have is a guy, if you can get him to use his legs a bit, he's a tough runner with good vision, and then you can throw it deep downfield over people's heads. That's where you're getting into Lopez's strengths here, right? He got a 91 deep passing grade last year, completed 49% adjusted completion rate on deep balls last year. Both of those are very good numbers. Now, I think to me, what Lopez needs to work on, and a lot of guys, young guys, need to work on, his legs were really his biggest weapon against pressure. Throwing against pressure was an issue for him last year. 34.6 passing grade under pressure was a problem. And again, he's a young kid. He's talented. Even though he's kind of undersized, he generates a lot of power. He's got a really good arm, throws from his lower body that very, very well. But I think you're talking about a kid who, if he can handle the step up and the different looks that he's going to see. When you talk about, think about some of the defensive coaches that he's going to face in this conference, right? You're talking about Pat Narduzzi at Pitt, at Clemson, what they have on defense, right? And Duke with Manny Diaz. It's going to be those moments for Gio Lopez under pressure that are going to decide his success this season.
Absolutely. All right, so my offensive player spotlight is the guy who will be snapping him the football in Austin Blask. He's one of the best pass blockers at center we have in college football. 84.6 pass blocking grade last year, 7th among all Power 4 centers. He did not allow a single sack, only give up 5 pressures on 410 pass blocking reps. Former Georgia Bulldog. Needs to get a little bit stronger in the run game with only a 65.1 run blocking grade, but he has great length at 6'5" to engulf defenders. And like I said, he's one of the best pass blockers we have at the center position.
That always helps. I mean, especially, again, when you have an undersized quarterback who struggles to throw through pressure, it helps to have an experienced center like that. We'll talk about the defensive side here. And, look, transfers from all over the place. One of them coming with Steve Belichick, defensive coordinator, over from Washington, cornerback Thaddeus Dixon, who had an 80.9 coverage grade last season and 12 forced incompletions, 7th among all Power 4 corners. I think you're talking about if Steve Belichick's going to go heavy man-to-man this year in this defense at North Carolina, if he wants to get aggressive, Thaddeus Dixon is really the right player to start that with, and it helps that he's already got 1 year in the system at Washington last year where the secondary was pretty good. That's a team that struggled in the trenches more so than on the back end, but that's a good secondary that Steve Belichick had, and he's going to bring one of the best players from it in Thaddeus Dixon over with him.
So their over-under is 7.5 right now. Are you going over or under, and what should be one of the most fascinating teams to follow in 2025?
Gee, wow. I'll tell you something. Their first game against TCU on that Monday Night Football for college. That's
a lot of huge Week 1 ACC games, I will say.
Yeah, TCU at UCF is fun, out of conference, and they get Clemson as the first conference game because, of course, they do. I'm going to play it safe and go under. There's just so little I'm sure of on this team. I just don't. I mean, you're basically, if you're picking the over, you're going, Bill Belichick's still got it, right? Yeah. Not that he doesn't still have it. He's obviously the greatest coach ever, but it's college. It is different. It's a little bit different dealing with the mistakes from professionals week to week and then from 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, right? I'm going to take the under. I could see, look, if Lopez is good and he's really got this team playing fundamentally sound football, as is, the Belichick way. Do we call it the Tar Heel way now instead of the Patriot?
I guess so. Instead of the Patriot way?
We can't go Patriot way. You got to the Tar Heel way. We'll go with it. We'll figure it out as we go. But I'm going to take the under. I'm going to play it safe. We're going to find out a lot week 1. TCU's a good team coming in there.
Yeah, I think, like I said, it's going to be a fascinating storyline to follow this year. I think they could have a winning season at North Carolina, but unlikely they'll be competing for an ACC title this year. I'll go under 2. I could see them going 8-4 though. It's actually a pretty manageable schedule, I will say, in the ACC. Not a lot of besides Clemson. They could, if Belichick is really good, I mean, they could start winning games left and right in the ACC there.
Yeah, they don't have the worst schedule here. There's some games even their level of talent should be able to win, but you got to coach making a jump in a certain way. You've got a quarterback making a jump up from the Sun Belt. Let's see what the rest of it, especially their defense. I think I feel better about their defense right now than their offense. I'm just not sure what they have on offense. I like Lopez. It's just a step up now.
And yeah, they lost so many players in that skill position players from their receiving core to their running back unit, obviously too, with Marion Hampton gone. So I'm worried about a little bit of that offense right now. So yeah, I'll go soft under. I think it's like a 7-5 football team though. Before we get to the second half of this preview of the ACC, got to talk about the sponsor show that is Fabric by Gerber Life. What does success for your child look like for you? A job they're passionate about, traveling around the world, or just being happy and comfortable? Whatever their journey, you can help make it easier to achieve with a kids investment account from Fabric by Gerber Life. By making a contribution to your child's future today, you can help give them the means to pursue their dreams, big and small. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kids investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. Kids can invest when they're minors, but a kids investment account allows them to invest on their behalf now, giving their investments more time to grow. It's all online, and setting up an account can take you just 5 minutes. Then you can manage your child's account and monitor investments right from your phone. Unique gifting lists can be shared with family and friends, so instead of more stuff, they can help grow your child's investments for their future instead. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/pffcollege. That's meetfabric.com/pffcollege, meetfabric.com/pffcollege. Portfolios managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by APS Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. All right, next up is North Carolina's biggest rival. That is the NC State Wolfpack. They have been a well-oiled machine under head coach Dave Doran going into the 2024 season. They have won a winning record in 9 of the 10 years before this past year, where they had a 6-7 record overall. Both the offense and the defense share the blame. They're outside the top 85 in terms of EPA per play. There is some optimism, though, for 2025 as quarterback C.J. Bailey is back for his sophomore campaign after a really good true freshman year. And NC State also has a top 5 tight end in the country and some really solid pieces defensively. But Dawn, I just mentioned right there, a quarterback at C.J. Bailey who's really impressive and a star tight end too.
Yeah, he impressed as a true freshman last year, Bailey did, and he's a long, lanky, tall pocket passer. He can move a little bit, but you're going to see him more so succeeding, I think, from the pocket. I think he's got to just fill out his frame a bit. He's got this lanky build where he's got to put his whole body behind the delivery. But if he did that, you look at a 74.3 passing grade last season as a true freshman. I don't see a whole lot wrong with that. There's a lot of talent to work with him. And then you talk about Justin Joly at tight end, who, especially at UConn before and then last year at NC State, does so many things after the catch, doesn't he? I think that's the big appeal to him. Yards after catch, missed tackles forced. He makes even some contested catches. So I think that's a duo that's going to be worth looking out for. We got some questions at wide receiver without Kevin Concepcion, but when you have a young quarterback with a lot of talent and a tight end who can make a lot of easy throws, he can turn easy throws into explosive plays, you got some potential on offense.
Yeah, C.J. Bailey had the best passing grade of any true freshman quarterback last year with a 74.3 passing grade. That was better than DJ Lagway. That was better than Dylan Raiola, too. So, I'm really excited to see what he could do as an encore as a sophomore. So, Jolie is a star tight end. I am worried about the receiver position, wide receiver position for NC State, though, because Casey Concepcion transferred to Texas A&M. He's a top 10 receiver in the country. Noah Rogers is back, and he actually led all NC State wideouts last year in receiving yards, but he had fewer than 500 receiving yards last year and a 65.6 receiving grade. Wesley Grimes and Terrell Anderson both had below a 65 PFF grade as well. So without Concepcion there, I'm a little worried about wide receiver for NC State this year.
Agree with that, and you hope you have weapons on the outside who can allow Bailey to make those quick rhythm throws out there, right? It can't all go to Justin Joly unless he's as good as Tyler Warren was at Penn State last year, but we're not going to make bets on that right now. I think what you have with what Bailey's he's going to have to maybe elevate those guys on the outside. Now, he might have the ability to do so because he had a good true freshman year. 14th in the FBS in the adjusted completion rate, right? Top 20 intermediate passing grade. I think he throws with really nice touch. He's very decisive. And I think, again, he just got to add more muscle to this frame. And I shouldn't say he's not he's not just a pocket passer, right? He's built like a pocket passer, and that's where he's going to succeed most of the time. But he did also force 28 missed tackles on 81 carries last year. So not a blazer, but a guy who does have enough mobility. For me, as with any young guys, any of the younger freshman quarterbacks, two things. Don't stare down your first read, right? 4.6% turnover-worthy player. So he had that passing grade, a solid passing grade, even with the second highest turnover-worthy play rate in the ACC. And one of the big things as a runner, skinnier guy, dynamic athlete, I get it. He wants to lay it on the line for his team, especially as a freshman. Don't take so many hits. 8 fumbles last year and kind of limited work. Don't take so many hits. Run out of bounds. I get it. Love the competitiveness. Absolutely loves it. I should say I absolutely love it. Just have to be a little safer with the football. But we get that with a lot of young guys, right? You could get a jump in ball security in year 2. You could get a jump in reading the defenses in year 2, but he's got enough talent to really be something for this team. I think especially for me, the touch and timing that he throws with from the pocket, he's got a lot of ability. I really liked what I saw from Bailey last year.
Especially because he entered the year as the backup, and then Grayson McCall had to medically retire due to concussions. And so Bailey was thrown in there as a true freshman, and he performed pretty admirably as a true freshman, right? And a guy like Dalton mentioned, he should be targeting a lot in that offense, is Justin Joly, his tight end. Joly transferred to NC State from UConn last year, and he remained one of the top receiving threats at tight end despite the jump up in competition level. 661 receiving yards this past season, 5th among all tight ends in the Power 4, and he was 6th in the country with 11 contested catches and 12 broken tackles after the catch, too. Over the last 2 years, he has 1,247 receiving yards. The only 2 tight ends who had more in that stretch were Harold Fannin Jr. and Tyler Warren. He's an elite athlete. He's 6'3", 235 pounds. He separates at a very, very high level. Not a great blocker, as you would imagine, for tight end that size, but he's a really dynamic receiver at the position.
Feels like the type of player that every offense has now, right? It's just one of these undersized-ish tight ends. Everyone's obviously looking for the next Harold Fannin Jr., but he's been doing it for multiple years. You saw him do it at UConn for a couple of seasons, and last year, even despite the quarterback issues, Joly's a really good player. He's going to get a lot of touches in this offense.
Who is their star defensive player?
You know, they got a corner transferred up from Villanova last year, Devin Marshall, who is an absolute ball hawk. 13 forced incompletions, was the second most in the Power 4, a 74 coverage grade. This NC State team the last couple years has had a very solid secondary, and they just keep adding pieces to it. Devin Marshall's another one who, look, you know, there's times where he's going to take his chances, right? But when you talk about a guy that forces incompletions at that higher rate and can break on the football the way that he does, it gives you a lot of hope that this secondary is going to be good once again.
Yeah, it's really cool to see Justin Joly go from UConn to NC State, still be a great player. Devin Marshall go from Villanova, the FCS level, to NC State, still be a great player too. So really cool to see those two guys really be the stars of NC State's offense and defense right now. Dawn, what is the bottom line for this team? Their win total right now is set at 6.5 for the NC State Wolfpack after a 6-7 record this past year. Like I said before, though, they had a winning record in 9 of the 10 years before this past season. So will they bounce back in 2025, or will it be another so-so year for NC State?
Yeah, they won 6 games last year with all the quarterback turmoil that they had, and they lost. Well, the fun one, did you see this with Dave Doran recently talking about their first opponent, East Carolina?
No.
They lost their bowl game to East Carolina.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I think there was the big fight sometime at the end of the game.
I think so, yeah.
Right? And the recent quote about, they were talking about that first game, and it's on the Thursday night of week 1. He goes, "Oh, I want to beat the shit out of that team." I was like, oh, so Dave Doran's a little irritated with the Pirates, but hey. The Pirates went out there and won the game. They beat them in the bowl game. It is what it is, and that's really why they didn't have a winning season right there. So we get an immediate rematch from what's suddenly a fierce rivalry between East Carolina and NC State. But no, I think I'm going to take the over 6.5. I mean, they've got a reputation for at least having winning seasons. I don't know with such a young quarterback right now that they're in contention for the ACC title game, but I think 6.5 is a reasonable standard. I mean, you look at this schedule right now, could easily start 3-0.
Yep.
Very well could start 4-2 or 5-1. We'll see where the schedule gets tougher in the middle. Notre Dame, Pitt, Georgia Tech, Miami. But I think 7 wins is realistic. I do think that's realistic, and they just have to, now that they're committed to CJ Bailey. Sorry, I was mixing it up with Grayson James.
Yeah.
All these new quarterbacks that come in midseason with CJ Bailey. Now that they've had the full offseason and he's just their guy instead of all of Grayson McCall and all that hanging over him, I think 7's realistic. I'll take an over. They're solid.
I'll go under. I think this is a pretty tough schedule looking at it.
Got to get off to a good start. I think they could start 3-0.
Yeah.
3-0 and then go 4-5 the rest of the way is what I'm looking at, and there's another win in there against an FCS team. So I think I'm in. I'll get them to squeak over 7, maybe 8. This is a team that's just always solid. Win one or two of these 50-50 games. Get yourself in
actually,
there.
you know what? Screw it. I'm going over. I recounted it. I think I counted it wrong. So, yeah, I'm going to go over 6.5. I think we'll get to 7-5. I don't know about more than that, but I think 7-5 is possible for this team. So I'll go over 6.5 too with NC State. All right. Next up is the Pittsburgh Panthers. Really, 2024 was a tale of two halves for Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh started off the year 7-0, and they were number 18 in the AP poll. And then after that, 7-0, they finished 7-6. They lost their final 6 games of the season, including the bowl game. Still, even with a brutal 6-game losing streak to end the year, still a nice improvement from their 3-9 season in 2023. Pitt has now had a winning season in 5 of the last 6 years under Pat Narduzzi, and will be looking for another one in 2025. They'll need significant improvement from their offense to do so. They are only 114th in PFF grade as a unit last year. But Dalton, the strength of this team is the second level of their defense.
Well, the strength of this team is generally, with Pat Narduzzi as their head coach, is generally their defense, in some fashion. But this linebacker room, especially Kyle Lewis and Rasheem Biles, they're the tone setters for this team. They're the stars of this team. 2 of the top 10 linebackers in the country, your number 3 linebacker unit in the country, and rightfully so. They've got, I think the big thing that jumps out to me when I watch the entire crew, speed.
Yeah.
They have got team speed on defense. Obviously, they're aggressive in the secondary with the way Narduzzi plays his coverages, but these linebackers, Lewis and Biles especially, they're difference makers, and they're a serious problem when it comes to them flying around the field, making plays on the football, run or pass, it doesn't matter. One of the few linebacker units that I feel good about, both in the run game and in coverage.
Yeah, Lewis, my number 5 linebacker in the country. We'll talk about him later. Rasheem Biles, number 10. Pitt's the only school in America that had 2 of my top 10 linebackers in the country. You could make an argument they're the number 1 linebacker unit in the country. They're number 3 for me, but could definitely make an argument they're number 1. Best linebacker unit easily in the ACC next year. Speed at linebacker. They have speed at running back and Desmond Reed too, but the question mark is, what is the offense outside of Desmond Reed? Because we'll talk about him. He's a top 10 running back in the country. But everywhere else, Eli Holstein, 57.1 passing grade last year. Offensive line, 60 grade as a unit last year, which was 112th in the country. They were also 107th in receiving grade last year, and they lost a top wide receiver in Kanata Mumfield to the NFL, and their top tight end in Gavin Bartholomew to the NFL too. So outside of Desmond Reed, I have a lot of questions on offense, including Dawn at quarterback. Eli Holstein has a lot of fans in NFL draft circles because of his tools, but it was still an up and down year for him last year.
He does have tools. He can throw the ball downfield. You talk about throwing the ball outside the numbers and down the sidelines. That's where 10 of his 12 big-time throws went last year, were at or outside the numbers. So he definitely has the arm strength to push it down the field and outside. The other thing, too, he's not a part of the design run game too often, more of a scrambler when he does run, but 6.7 yards per carry was 12th among qualified quarterbacks. So he's got some athleticism to him if he gets loose. The biggest thing I'm going to talk about with Eli Holstein is ball security. Now, on the surface, he only threw 7 interceptions. This is where PFF comes in. 5.3% turnover-worthy play rate, highest in the ACC. 10 dropped interceptions that he threw, tied for the most in the country. The ball security, if it doesn't improve, I think the regression monster could hit when it comes to the interception total. You cannot put the ball in danger this often. If you're over 5% on the turnover-worthy play rate, first of all, you're not an NFL quarterback.
No.
That's just where it's at. Guys with 5+% turnover-worthy play rates are not NFL quarterbacks. Also, too high a variance to win ball games. The last thing I'm going to throw out there with regarding that, third down, got to be better. 27.9 passing grade on third down with 10 turnover-worthy plays, both the worst in the country right there. So he's got talent. Obviously, pocket passer, solid athlete who can scramble. He's a sneaky scrambler. Ball security is everything. He has that turnover-worthy play rate, honestly, he's got to cut that maybe in half to really get Pitt where they need to go. I got to see it. I mean, that's the big thing. It's the big thing is when I watch some of them and I just go, you just can't have those. There's certain ones where I just go, you can't have that. He's got to clean up the ball security or he's going to get caught with some regression this year.
He had a lot of turnover luck last year, that's for sure. A lot of tools, though, so we're excited to see what he could do as an encore because he's still a very young kid, too. It's worth mentioning that. He was a very highly rated recruit coming out of high school, but you mentioned Dalton. It was an up-and-down year for him last year, and the raw stats don't really paint the whole picture with Eli Holstein last year. All right, my offensive player spotlight is obviously going to be Desmond Reed. He is the best receiving back in college football right now. He was excellent at Western Carolina, transferred to Pitt last year, and he led all running backs in the country with 580 receiving yards. 540 yards after the catch. Only Cam Scadaboo had more than Desmond Reed. He's smaller. He's 5'8". He's a $175. That'll likely keep him from being an every down back in the NFL. But it's worth mentioning he still was fourth among all ACC running backs last year with a 23% forced missed tackle rate, and he returned a punt for a touchdown too. He is simply an electric player who should be designed touches any way possible as a runner, as a receiver, in the return game. I was such a big fan of Desmond Reed's tape. I think right now, Dawn, he's a top 10 running back in the country. Reminds me a lot of last year with Brashard Smith at SMU.
That's a good call. And Reed obviously has more experience as a running back than Brashard Smith did. But Smith is really built like a receiver. Reed, he's built like a back. He's just really compact, right? You think, I mean, it's just some guys, doesn't matter the size. They're just good football players, right? And Reed's one of those guys, worked his way up, transferred in from Western Carolina, and was their best offensive player pretty easily last year. I agree with you. He's a problem when it comes to if you're playing man-to-man, you better not leave a linebacker on him because you don't have Pitt's linebackers. No. You don't have a guy like Kyle Lewis, right, who can cover somebody like that. And let's talk about Kyle Lewis on the defensive side right now. And look, same thing, a little bit undersized for a linebacker, 225 pounds, but, man, is he a darn good football player. And speed is the theme with him, and he can do anything on the field, and even being a bit undersized, not afraid to get physical. One of 6 FBS linebackers with an 80-plus grade in run defense and in coverage. He's just a guy who just does everything for you. He's athletic enough to do everything you ask him to do. He's physical enough, and I like him as the weak side guy, the weak side linebacker in this defense because it allows him to run and chase, and a lot of times he is unblocked, and even for that size, he's an excellent tackler. He's aggressive downhill, and he's got the speed to work in coverage. Kyle Lewis is one of the few linebackers in the country who can do everything. Yeah, he can move like a slot corner, honestly. It's crazy how well he moves at 225. He's, like I said, a top 5 linebacker in the country right now. All right, Dalton, the win total for Pitt is set at 6.5 right now. So will they go above that? And will they were 7-5 last year, right? So they were above that last year. Will they go above that? They lost the last 6 games last year.
Yeah,
I mean, when's the last time we've seen that? They won 7 in a row to start, and then they lost 6 in a row to finish, including the bowl game to Toledo. I'm going to go under. First 2 games they should win. The backyard brawl will be fun this year because West Virginia was winning that game last year at Pitt, and they blew it with their secondary. I'm going to go under. I have a hard time. I know there's some scouts that like Holstein, but I have a hard time trusting him. The ball security worries me big time. The passing game worries me. I'm worried with this offense everywhere besides Desmond Reed right now. Offensive line, Holstein's got to be better. Receiving core, I'm worried with that offense right now. And they have some defensive questions, too, besides linebacker, right? So that's another thing, too. So I'll go under. 6-6 is possible. I think 6-6 is probably what I project for this team, but I don't think they're going to go 7-5 again like they did last year. Next up is a team that actually made the college football playoff in 2024. That was the SMU Mustangs. First year as a member of the ACC really could not have gone better for Rhett Lashley. 11-3, made the playoff. It was their best season in 40 years. They made a pretty controversial switch at quarterback early on in the season, going from Preston Stone to Kevin Jennings, and it worked out beautifully for SMU. Kevin Jennings was 10th among all quarterbacks in the country with an 85 passing grade. He's back for another year, and they return a lot of other key pieces too.
they should have maybe another run at a college football playoff spot in 2025. They do have some questions at their skill position players, though, but Dalton, Jennings is back. And on that defense, they have an elite safety duo.
Absolutely. You talk about Isaiah Nkwobia and Ahmad Moses. That's arguably the best safety duo in the country, right? And I think it's their secondary last year. These two guys were the glue that held it together. They went out. They're trying to figure out the cornerback. It wasn't as great on the outside. They're losing a lot of pieces in their front seven. But these two guys on the back end of their secondary, they don't give up explosive plays. They both get after the football. We're going to talk about one of them more expansively in a minute. But I think when you have that as the glue that holds your defense together, you're in a pretty darn good spot while you're figuring out the rest of it, because they did lose a lot of pieces in that front seven.
They did. Nkwobia and Ahmad Moses, though, they're each among the 12 highest graded safeties in the country. Now, I said arguably the best safety duo in the country. I think them and Alabama, those are the two. With Bray Hubbard and Keon Sabb, Nkwobia and Ahmad Moses, those are the two safety duos. Like, okay, those are the two best.
I'm trying to think of any others, but keep rolling.
Literally whoever with Caleb Downs. If you want to,
anybody, literally anybody with Caleb Downs. Just Caleb Downs. Just leave.
He's basically two players in one.
Yeah, exactly. Well, easy now. That's Travis Hunter.
That's true. That is true. Well, he plays running back this year. We'll see. Skill position players, I'm a little worried about for SMU right now. Now, they have a top 15 tight end in the country in R.J. Maryland. But the rest of it, mentioned before, Brashard Smith, he's gone. Top two receivers are gone too, and Roderick Daniels and Jr. and Keyshawn Smith. They still have a top 10 quarterback, with Dalton talk about in just a second, and Kevin Jennings. But the weapons outside of R.J. Maryland are a bit of a question mark right now. But Dalton, this guy, Kevin Jennings, really came out of nowhere. You and I really disagreed with benching Preston Stone at the beginning of the year, but Jennings proved us wrong.
Well, it's because Preston Stone was a really good quarterback, and Jennings came in and outside of, I would say, 2 games, the Duke game and the Penn State game, outside of that, Jennings was even better than Stone was. Yeah. And that's a high bar that we were setting in 2023. When you look at Kevin Jennings, wiry build, 6'1", not the biggest guy, but a really good athlete who can work outside the pocket. And I think the best thing that he does is identify single coverage matchups, identify those one-on-one matchups. And that's what Rhett Lashley wants in this offense. He wants to get vertical. He wants to push the ball downfield. He wants to isolate guys in one-on-one matchups. Kevin Jennings, when throwing into single coverage last year, Max, had the 4th best passing grade in the country.
Wow.
Right? So when he's clean and he sees those pre-snap reads, he's really good. 74.1 passing grade when moved off his spot, tied with Cade Klubnik for the highest in the Power 4. So you're talking about a guy who just in general is really dangerous. Now, there's times in the pocket, kind of like Stone was a little bit too, where the footwork can be a little frenetic. He gets a little antsy. Sometimes when you can feel in the rhythm of a game, of certain games. I can remember moments in the Louisville game, certainly the Duke game when Manny Diaz was throwing everything. The Penn State game, obviously in the playoff in the cold when he melted down. You can feel all of a sudden where Kevin Jennings is getting antsy, right? Yeah. Just need him to calm down in big spots. Yes, there's going to be great defensive coordinators that throw a lot of stuff at you, right? But I think don't let it affect your footwork and your accuracy, especially in the pocket, right? Less than 55% of his passes, according to our quarterback charting, were charted as accurate. That's footwork. That's just calming down in the pocket. If he plays a little more calm within the pocket on some of those in-between throws, kind of the same scouting report I have for Preston Stone because of this offense, he's going to be really, really good again. It's just that he has to avoid certain quarterbacks, you can just feel it. It's like a couple of throws or a couple of when he gets rattled. We saw it, the Duke game when he turned the ball over, I think 6 times. The Penn State game where it just all fell apart in the first quarter for him. Just calm down in those big moments, and he's going to have a really good season again.
I think his playoff game against Penn State has a lot of people, just not very high on him going into the year. You got to remember, he was excellent before that game, and that was a big spot for him to be in, and obviously he did not perform well at all. But I still have a lot of faith in Kevin Jennings. I still think he's easily a top 15 quarterback in the country, and for me, he's a top 10 quarterback.
And let's be real with that Penn State defense for a second. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the only quarterback I saw tear apart that defense all year was Dillon Gabriel.
Yeah.
I mean, because even Will Howard, even the Ohio State game.
Howard struggled.
Yeah, he struggled. I mean, that was the only – Dillon Gabriel and Oregon were the only ones that really tore up Penn State like that. So it's not like – especially, and it's 0 degrees out there in the mountains in Penn State, so it's like – lay off him. He's like, it's almost like the college Justin Herbert. I'm like, can you lay off him for one bad game? Can we just calm down on just ripping? It's Kevin
unfortunate
Jennings?
It's the final game of the year, but it's just like Herbert. Yeah.
I mean, they were outmatched. That's all there is to it. Jennings is really good.
Yeah,
he is.
Well, one guy who could have helped him in that playoff game was R.J. Maryland, who unfortunately suffered a torn ACL last year, but he was playing like one of the best tight ends in the country before going down with that torn ACL after 7 games. 2.7 yards per route run throughout those first 7 games. Only Harold Fannin Jr. and Tyler Warren were more among FBS tight ends. Both those guys, I mean, listen, every tight end stat, Fannin and Warren last year were going to be at the top of it. They had 2 record-setting years. Anytime you're even close to them in any stat, it's really good. So R.J. Maryland, third best yards per route run besides those 2 guys. He missed half a year, but over the last 2 years, Dolan, he has 877 receiving yards, the 7th most among all returning tight ends in the country, even after missing half a season last year too. Plenty room for improvement as a blocker, but he made some strides in that department with a 55.9 run blocking grade this past year. Now he's healthy. He should once again be Kevin Jennings' favorite target up the seams.
Yeah, pretty impressive that they still made the playoff and still had the explosive offense they did without Maryland for a good chunk of the year, because he's really their most notable skill player on the outside. And for as much as he's listed as a tight end, he's very often that guy that gets up the seams and makes things happen vertically down the field.
Like a Rondé Gadsden.
Exactly. I don't think he's quite as tall, but he's a big, big piece of this offense. If he's 100%, you really change the look of this offense. And I know they don't have a lot of experience at receiver, but Rhett Lashley knows how to get these guys open. R.J. Maryland knows how to get himself open, that's for sure.
Let's talk about a guy who's going to be covering him a lot in practice, Dawn, and one half of one of the best safety duos in the country.
Yeah, Isaiah Nwokobia is just, if you don't know him on the list of future NFL safeties already, this is one of them, and you need to start watching the tape on him. He's the highest graded safety in the country over the past 2 years, even higher than Caleb Downs and Dylan Thieneman and all the other guys we talk about. 91.8 PFF grade over the last 2 years. One of 4 FBS safeties with 85-plus grades in run defense and coverage in that span. 7 interceptions over the last 2 years. Like I mentioned before, you've got 2 safeties in Nwokobia and Ahmad Moses, who are just really instinctive. They get to the football, whether it's run game or pass game. These 2 guys, and Nwokobia especially, really the glue that hold this defense together. That's going to be the case even more so this year when we don't have an elite front 7 with Elijah Roberts and Jared Harrison Hunt and all these guys. This team, I think this year is going to be built from the back end up while they rebuild this defensive line.
Definitely. Yeah, great player. All right. Win total is set at 8.5 for SMU. What's the bottom line for this team? And Dalton, can this be a college football playoff team once again in 2025? Before you pick the over-under, can they be a playoff team, do you think?
Yeah, because I think they can. If you're a team, showed this last year, that they are the ones who showed this last year. If you are good enough, if you've got at least 10, if not 11 wins, and you are good enough, if you're good enough to make your conference title game, you're good enough to make the playoff, whether it be winning it or like they did last year, barely losing it and the way that all went. This is a tough schedule they have, SMU.
It's tougher than last year, which is a big reason why they made it last year.
That's true, too. I mean, Clemson, Miami, Louisville, 2 really fun out-of-conference games. Baylor and TCU, they're playing out-of-conference. Ooh, man. I think I'm going under.
Okay.
Oh, well. What is it? They have to get to 9. They can take 3 losses?
Yeah.
Dang.
8.5.
Dang, that's tough.
I'll go.
I think I'm going to go under.
I'll go over to be opposite of you, but I can see the argument for both.
I'm going to go under. 2 really tough out-of-conference games with Baylor and TCU. I think awesome football games those are going to be. I am worried about this front 7. Because I think a reason not enough people talked about, I know we're always talking about Rhett Lashley and Kevin Jennings in this offense. This front 7 was spectacular last year, and they lost like the whole thing. And I like this safety pair, but at the end of the day, there's going to be some teams that want to run the ball on you. I look at Baylor, I look at Louisville, right? Some of these other teams. I think I'm gonna sneak it under.
Okay.
I think they're the see. It's like it's hard because when you have a Kevin Jennings, you should win 8 or 9 games. I think it's gonna be right on the border. I think maybe they go 8-4. The front 7. I need to see this front 7. That Baylor game week 2 is gonna be a ton of fun. That's a great football game, and I want to find out if their front 7 is gonna recover from all the guys that they lost.
I'll go soft over, just to be different, but I'm 50-50 on it.
Yeah. Boy, the books really have the ACC down pretty good.
They do.
They're making it tough on us.
I think either they win both Big 12 games they have against Baylor and TCU, and then they lose Clemson, Miami, and Louisville, or they win one of those 3 games and they lose to either Baylor or TCU. I don't think this is a playoff team, probably. I'm not going to pick them to make the playoff.
It's the regression on defense for me worries me. The front 7 worries me and all the pieces they lost.
But
they're still going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I don't think this is a playoff team. I think this is still a top 20, top 25 team in the country.
Reasonable.
So I think there's still enough talent to be a top contender in the ACC, maybe even make the ACC title game again, but not enough to win the ACC or make the playoff.
If you believe enough in them, and this has been a theme today, if you believe enough in them, they're one of the teams on the list that could be in second place.
Yes.
There's a reasonable like explanation to go, okay, this is why I'd pick SMU to be second.
I think they're probably the 4th best team in the conference right now.
Reasonable.
Behind, but it's close between Miami, Louisville, and SMU. I think those are the next 3 after Clemson. So, yeah, I think SMU would still be a really good team. Still be like an 8-4 type team probably, but 8-4, 9-3. Just don't think they'll get to 10 wins in 2025. All right, next up is the Stanford Cardinal. First year as a member of the ACC last year, same thing as their last 3 as a member of the Pac-12. They have now had a 3-9 record in 4 straight seasons, which is their worst 4-year stretch since 1958 to 1961. You see that guy right there, Andrew Luck on the left, obviously a legend at Stanford. He was the number 1 overall pick in the draft by the Colts. He was hired as Stanford's new general manager. One of his first acts, he fired head coach Troy Taylor. What did he do after that? He brought in his former head coach at the NFL level, and Frank Reich, who is now the interim head coach for Stanford right now. He was Luck's head coach during his final full season with the Indianapolis Colts in 2019. Reich was an NFL head coach for 6 years. He needs to work some magic, though, because this Stanford offense right now struggled last year, and they just lost their quarterback, and their top 2 wide receivers were really good players, in my opinion, too. So I have question marks for that right now. But Dalton, at least on defense, they have some solid players there.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at this team, you've got a back 7 that at least reasonably could keep them in games, right? You're talking about Colin Wright at corner. You're talking about Hunter Barth, who's a solid coverage linebacker. And this team, look, there's not a whole lot, obviously, we can take from, they're in a big transitional period right now, but I think the idea for this defense is going to be, as with a lot of teams trying to climb their way out of the cellar, keep us in games, right? Just keep us in games. I think Colin Wright in that secondary especially can do that. We saw them pull a couple of big upsets last year against a couple of pretty good passing games in Syracuse and Louisville, getting stops when they needed to, right? I know you didn't want me to bring that one up, but yeah, I had to not. You've said a lot
Could have been the ACC title game if they didn't lose that game.
You're darn right. I mean, but
don't want to talk about
it. But I think Stanford, look, they're going to try to build this defense this year from the back end up. They lost obviously the best pass rusher in David Bailey, who was an elite pass rusher. Try to win through coverage and keep yourself in the game.
Definitely. Now the question is, offensively, where is the offense going to come from? So last year they were 119th in PFF grade. They lost their starting quarterback and their top 2 receivers. Ashton Daniels, their quarterback, is now at Auburn, probably the backup quarterback at Auburn this year. And then you lose Alec Ayumanner, who was taken in the 4th round by the Tennessee Titans. Could have been a higher pick, and we actually interviewed him on the channel if you want to check it out. He could have been a 2nd-round pick, in my opinion. Other one, Emmett Mosley, the 5th, had a really impressive true freshman year at Stanford. He's now at Texas now, though, too. So a lot of question marks on this offense right now. It's been a problem for them in recent years and why Stanford's had their worst 4-year stretch since 1958 to 1961. New quarterback now, though, Dalton, and Elijah Brown, who was a former 4-star recruit out of high school. What should we know about him?
I mean, we think the favorite's Elijah Brown. There's also UCF transfer Dylan Risk. There's also Oregon State transfer Ben Gulbranson. I wouldn't be shocked at all to see all 3 of them. They had Bear Buckmeyer, another 4-star recruit who recently transferred in the spring to BYU, and maybe he's a factor in that job. But look, Elijah Brown, he's got 61 career dropbacks. He played a little bit last year. He's a pocket passer with a classic kind of over-the-top deliveries, exactly what you would expect Frank Reich would want in a quarterback. So maybe he is the favorite, especially as the young kind of ray of hope starting there. It's just, I think to me, he's got to play with better awareness in the pocket. Now, Stanford's pass protection was not very good last year, so he's under pressure a lot. It's going to be the factor of, do they want to expose Brown to that sort of environment again if their offensive line isn't great, or would they rather go with one of the veterans in Risk or Gulbranson? Either way, out of all three of them, you're getting pocket passers. Brown is just the youngest one with the highest ceiling, but he was pressured on almost half his dropbacks last season when he was out there. Just, you can't have that. You got to protect a young kid better than that.
Yeah, he was a true freshman last year at Stanford, checking his recruiting ranking right now. But he former four-star recruit, the number 17 quarterback in the country in 2024. So talented kid, like I said, four-star. Just see what he could do probably as a redshirt freshman as a starting quarterback this year. Offensive player spotlight can't be Ayemaner or Emmett Mosley because they're both gone. So they brought in a transfer receiver, and David Pantelis transferring in from Yale. So it goes from one elite academic institution in Yale to another one in Stanford now. And he was a really reliable receiver for the Yale Bulldogs last year. He was 25th among all receivers in the FCS last year with an 83.9 receiving grade. He's 5'11". He's 195 pounds, so basically average size. He plays far, far bigger than that, though. He caught 10 of his 17 contested targets last year. Some outrageous catches on David Pantelis' tape. And like I mentioned, with Alec Ayemaner gone, with Emmett Mosley the fifth gone too, Pantelis should be the top weapon for Elijah Brown or whoever plays quarterback for Stanford next year.
Got to be somebody, especially somebody, look, if you can make contested catches like that and your quarterback can trust you to win those 50-50 battles, that's big time. That's a guy you need. It's what they had in Ayemaner the last couple of years now. If Pantelis can do it here, then it gives a jolt to the passing game.
So, Dalton, last year when we previewed Stanford, our defensive player spotlight was Colin Wright. Our defensive player spotlight this year is Colin Wright.
One of the few holdovers, that's for sure, and we're entering a new era of Stanford football with Andrew Luck at the helm. But Colin Wright is one who's sticking around from the old regime, right? And another solid season. He had a 74 in 2023, 72 PFF grade last year, 3 interceptions, 5 pass breakups. Played a lot more in the nickel last year. He played in the outside the vast majority of his snaps last year, about half and half between the outside and the slot, even playing in the box a little bit more. So maybe preparing him even for the NFL to play in the nickel a little bit. 6 foot, 195 pounds, gets to the football, physical football player. I think Colin Wright, you look at again as the standout in this secondary and the leader of it now, going into his 4th year at Stanford.
Yes, 78.6 PFF grade over the last 2 years, 75-plus grades as a coverage defender and as a run defender, too. So he's a really solid player in that Stanford defense. All right, Dalton, win total for Stanford is set at 3.5 right now. So basically 4 straight 3-9 seasons. Will it be 3-9 again or worse, or will they finally get to the 4-win mark with Frank Reich?
This is. I think this is going to take some time. I'm going under there again. I just think. Actually, I look at this schedule. This is one of the harder ACC schedules we're looking at.
It's unforgiving, yeah.
Notre Dame, Miami, SMU, Pitt, at North Carolina for an East Coast trip, at Virginia for an East Coast trip, at BYU out of conference. Even, to be honest with you, at Hawaii out of conference is still a long ways for whoever gets to go out there, even from the West Coast. I'm going to take the under. There's just so much we don't know about this team is really the best way to put it. And whether it's one of those other veterans who really didn't do much for their other schools, or it's Elijah Brown as a young kid, I mean, Andrew Luck, I think, is building this program from scratch.
Yeah.
And scratch is right about now.
Yeah. Frank Reich, I like as head coach, but he's the interim head coach. It's not like he's a long-term guy there either. Notre Dame is one of their out-of-conference games. I don't know if you saw this, Dylan. They're not even favored in Week 0 against Hawaii. Hawaii is favored over Stanford right now.
At Hawaii, Hawaii's still got that weird thing where when you're at Hawaii, you're still in for a little bit. You're in for a ball game because of the travel. And Hawaii's not a bad football team by any means. It's just it's one of those. They have a heavy home road split, and when you're at Hawaii, that's tough. So, I mean, if they're not even favored in the Hawaii game, they're probably an underdog in every game on the schedule. Then.
Yeah. BYU's got a quarterback dilemma, too, so maybe that could be an interesting one.
Well, if it's Bear Bachmeier, then you've got the weird – which I don't know if it will be or not, if it's McKay Hillstead or you watch the BYU video for that one. But if the ironic part is that was Bear Bachmeier, that would be a tough look, too.
But even if you beat Hawaii, BYU, which I don't think they will, and San Jose State, even if you win all 3 of those games, you still have to win one of your ACC games too.
I'm not taking them to beat BYU.
That's what I'm saying.
Even in their current state, I'm not. Yeah.
So then after that, it's like, who do they beat in the ACC?
And San Jose State is also a decent football team. Yeah. It's not. I mean, you get into the territory, even though it's a Power 5 team in Stanford, or Power 4 team in Stanford, where you go, Oh, there's even like these group of 5 games where it's shaky.
Literally Hawaii's favorite already.
This is a long-term project.
Yeah.
And even Frank Reich being the interim coach, and maybe he becomes a permanent head coach. I don't know if that's ever going to be in the cards, depending on how this year goes and the culture. But Andrew Luck's trying to shake up the culture here and figure out long-term what this program is supposed to look like.
Definitely. So sorry, Zach Zimmerman, but could be another rocky year for Stanford in 2025. All right, next up in our ACC preview is my school. Go from Zach Zimmerman's school in Stanford to my school now in the Syracuse Orange. Despite never being a head coach before, Fran Brown hit the ground running in Cuse last year. They finished with a 10-3 record, and they finished number 20 in the final AP poll. Their best season in 6 years. Back when I was I believe, sophomore at Syracuse.
Long time ago, if you can't even remember.
Yes, so my sophomore year at Cuse is the last time they were that good in a season. Their biggest reason for success was Kyle McCord transferring in from Ohio State. He led the nation with 4,779 passing yards, which was nearly 500 more than any other quarterback in college football. Even though he's gone, and Oronde Gadsden's gone, and some of their top receivers are gone too, they could still have a good passing game in 2025. They brought in Steve Angeli from Notre Dame. They brought in Ricky Collins, too, from LSU. They're kind of battling it out at quarterback right now, and still have some promising talent at wide receiver, too, but their defense has to be better. That starts up front. Now, the unfortunate part for Syracuse, and a big reason why they went 10-3 last year, was the schedule was relatively easy. I know they beat Miami, which is a big win. Still a relatively easy schedule. They have the hardest schedule in the ACC in 2025, according to our power rankings. The top 10 hardest schedule in the country. All of their most difficult games, Dalton, are on the road too. It is an unforgiving schedule. So that's why 10-3 last year, win total right now is 5.5. That schedule is brutal for Syracuse this year.
Yeah, and it felt like that was the team. This is a team that really, last year's roster is like, wow, they really just put it all together, right? With McCord coming in from Ohio State, Gadsden a senior, so many guys that came in and were Trevor Pena. Now he's not even there. He's off to your other school in Penn State, and just so many things that came together, right? But you mentioned it. The hope is that the passing game can still be solid. We're assuming it's going to be Steve Angeli.
I would assume so.
We think so. I know they have Ricky Collins, LSU transfer Ricky Collins.
Fran Brown named Ricky Collins the starter in March. But then, 2 weeks later, they brought in Steve Angeli.
That was before they had Angeli. And Angeli, look, is not even as proven as McCord, because McCord at least had an entire year to start at Ohio State, right? Whereas Angeli never made he made one career start, the bowl game 2 years ago. He had one career start, and he's looked decent. I think Angeli could do some of the same things that McCord did. We just haven't seen as much of it, right? But when you have Angeli, Darryl Gill, although he's had some off-field issues, Jonte Cook was a former 5-star recruit at Texas, right? Emmanuel Ross was a 4-star. It feels like Fran Brown, the biggest ray of hope is that he's gotten really a lot of momentum on the recruiting side, right? He's an excellent recruiter. Just trying to figure out year to year, how much can we get in the portal to help us win right now, too.
They brought in a 5-star recruit next year at wide receiver too, so that's also another one too. It's like they're recruiting right now, which again, I said this time and time again, that was the biggest problem with Dino Babers' era. They did a pretty good job of developing talent into NFL players. They were horrible at recruiting, horrendous recruiting under Dino Babers. Fran Brown has them recruiting at a level they've never done before. So getting talent in the building is like half the battle in college football nowadays. Fran Brown is doing that. Should still have I think a solid passing attack, maybe not the leading passer in college football like Kyle McCord, but just still be a solid one next year. I am worried about the defensive line, though. So Syracuse's defensive line last year, 67.8 grade as a unit. That was 99th in the country. Making matters worse, they lost their star edge rusher in Fadil Diggs, who's now in the NFL, and a freshman D tackle, Murad Watson, last year was a really solid player. He transferred over to Texas. So you lose two of your best defensive linemen, maybe your two best defensive linemen from last year's team are both gone from a defensive line that was already 99th in PFF grade last year. I'm worried about that defensive line this year for Syracuse.
No, I agree with that, especially when you talk about it was already not a great unit, and then you lose arguably your two best players out of it. That is tough. And again, we're always talking about trenches. Syracuse's O-line and D-line, for me, are things to be a little bit concerned about here.
So tell me more about Steve Angeli, who had a really good 82.3 PFF grade last year at Notre Dame, but of course it was on limited duty as a backup.
Yeah, I mean, you had mostly mop-up duty. You had the best moment came when he had the field goal drive when Riley Leonard came out of the Penn State game and he led the field goal drive to kind of give Notre Dame a little bit of momentum going into halftime. He's only made one career start, their bowl game 2 years ago against Oregon State. Won that game. Oregon State wasn't playing with a whole lot on the field, but Steve Angeli, in the same way that you want to talk about Kyle McCord, you need to be just a sound, on-time pocket passer. That's what Angeli's going to be. Look, 91 career dropbacks, 0 turnover-worthy plays. He's going to win with vision. He's going to win with timing. He's going to win with accuracy. Throws under 2.5 seconds in his career. 83.5 passing grade, 4 touchdowns. So it's a thing of he's going to be an on-time, fundamentally sound pocket passer, which makes sense when you consider that Kyle McCord's job last year was to run the RPOs, to throw the ball down the seams on time and get rid of the ball quickly because, again, the pass protection wasn't great. Now, I would describe Steve Angeli as high floor, low ceiling. He can get the job done. He can make the right throws. I don't know if he will turn into the super gunslinger that Kyle McCord did. Maybe. We'll have another fun season like that. I don't know if we'll break the ACC passing record again. But, I think that's what you have with Angeli is a guy who can go in there, and the word is probably reliable. He can make the right throws and make them accurately. He's just not going to give you a whole lot when it comes to extending plays or anything like that.
So, I don't know how much you watch Ricky Collins, but Bill Dotree makes out a very good point. Ricky Collins was sent to ACC Media Days, not Steve Angeli.
Well, then I didn't watch Collins a ton because it's honestly not.
He's toolsier, I know, than Steve Angeli. I know he's a former 4-star at LSU. Didn't play that much at LSU, but he's got more tools than Angeli. But it's just, I think Angeli's a higher floor player. Collins is more of the boomer bust player.
You wonder if it's Angeli early, depending on what it looks like in practice, because that's all starting this week, right? Depending on what it looks like in practice, because Angeli's got at least a little bit of experience. The other thing, too, though, we need to point out with Angeli, we have more tape on him, which is why we spotlighted him, but he was in a 3-man race for the Notre Dame starting job, and he's the one of the 3 that got cut in the spring. Yeah. He left Notre Dame because he didn't beat out C.J. Carr and Kenny Minchie, and Notre Dame felt like they could move on without him. So maybe it will be Collins. Maybe Collins will be the guy, and they play the upside. If he's obviously more athletic than Angeli, then so be it. There's a chance that we see them both. That's going to be a fun quarterback battle to watch even through the next few weeks.
How I describe it is Angeli has way less tools than Ricky Collins, but he's a higher floor player. Collins has a big arm, good mobility, but he's more of a boomer bust player right now. So I think that's how I describe it. So it's a matter of what they want to look for in that offense between a high floor distributor in Steve Angeli, or are you going for the more toolsier player in Ricky Collins? But it's a good point by Bill Daughtry in the chat that Ricky Collins did go to media days, and it's worth mentioning that Fran Brown was pretty committed to Ricky Collins as a starter before Angeli got there. It remains to be seen what he feels like now with Angeli there too. So
I think that's something you find out in practice too.
Yeah.
Has Angeli he hasn't practiced yet, has he? We haven't seen him in a single practice at Syracuse. So if he's winning that job, he's winning it in the next month.
Yeah, he really could. I think it'll be interesting. I think it's still a battle's ongoing right now. So I don't think saying either of them is going to be the starter is correct, because I think it will be an ongoing battle even into the season too. But it is worth pointing out both those guys, because I think it is important that both those guys are going to be probably seeing the field probably at Syracuse next year. All right, their star offensive player, in our opinion, is Darrell Gill Jr. So they lost their top 3 pass catchers to the NFL. Gill should be the top weapon in 2025. He's a tall player, 6'3", very strong hands. He never dropped a pass in his career. He's also caught 12 of his 18 contested targets in his career too, which is in the 100th percentile for FBS wideouts in the last 2 years in that span. He really turned it on down the stretch of the year too. In the final 3 games of the season for Syracuse, he had a combined 335 receiving yards. So basically 110 yards per game in the final 3 games of the year. He really turned it on for Cuse down the stretch, and now projects as the top receiver for Syracuse next year.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, you're replacing a lot when you look at it. You go, Trevor Pena went to Penn State. Aronde Gadsden is gone. Jackson Meeks is gone. LaQuint Allen out of the backfield. Didn't he lead the nation in catches out of the backfield?
I think so, yeah.
I mean, you're talking about really your top 4 guys from last year are all off of this team. So Gill is going to have to be the guy that steps up. Started to do it late last year, but they need somebody, especially for as much as at least last year they wanted to throw the ball vertically. They got to win deep downfield.
Definitely. All right, Dolan. Deuce Chestnut. who is a guy that was at Syracuse when I was actually there at Cuse, transferred over to LSU, transferred back to Syracuse, and now he's a pretty solid player once again for the Orange.
Fun career. That's a fun one. Syracuse down to Baton Rouge, back to Syracuse. That's two different types of towns right there.
Two different climates for sure.
Two different climates for sure. At least the Cuse are in the dome, right? But no, I mean Deuce Chestnut, just a solid player, right? Especially for Cuse this past year, 75.6 coverage grade this past year. They had, he was a corner. Now he's back to safety after playing corner his first 3 seasons. Made the adjustment pretty well. He's a smart player, knows what he's doing, high football IQ, gets to the football, reads the quarterback's eyes well. And I think it's just sometimes a case of a player getting to the right position. We see this a lot of times in college where it's, is he a corner? Is he a safety? You know who else we saw that with? Andrew Makuba going over to Texas, moving over to safety full-time. So it can happen where a guy just moves to a certain position and things start to click for him. I think that's the case with Deuce Chestnut, and you get one more year of him here.
Yeah, 81 PFF grade in his first 2 years at Cuse, playing outside corner, goes over to LSU, barely plays at LSU in his 1 year there, transfers back to Syracuse. He plays safety for Syracuse last year after playing outside corner. Usually it's a safety playing a little slot corner. He played outside corner, then safety. Still a great player for Syracuse defense last year too. So Deuce Chestnut, really welcome back in that Syracuse program with open arms, considering how good he was for that program. Dalton, again, 10-3 record last year. Win total is set at 5.5, though, because this schedule is freaking brutal. If you want to see the Syracuse schedule right now, they open with Tennessee, which is a neutral site game. And then they also have at Clemson, at SMU, at Georgia Tech, at Miami, at Notre Dame.
Well, and home games, not easy home games against Duke and Pitt and North Carolina and BC. I mean, this is about as hard as an ACC schedule gets, plus a Tennessee game out of conference.
And plus, they barely beat UConn last year, too.
And UConn's a good football team.
And they beat UConn, and they play UConn again this year.
Shout out Max Toscano.
True.
I think just UConn's
the Max Bowl on September 6th. That's huge.
Oh, good call.
Yeah, we're going to hit him in the DMs. Maybe we can do something for that game. That'll be fun.
Oh, yeah, we got to make a bet. All right, if Toscano's watching, we got to make a bet with him.
Yeah.
I'm not involved in this, and neither one of you is playing. Actually, I don't know if UConn might be playing FAU this year. I don't know, but we'll find out that hard. Well, maybe we'll get the round robin thing one day, like the commander-in-chief.
Oh, yeah, that'd be fun. Over-under for Syracuse is 5.5.
I'm going under. Instability at quarterback. Top 4 pass catchers gone. D-line's a concern. Brutal schedule. I'm going under 5.5 here. I do like the long-term approach that Fran Brown's taking with this recruiting. I just think last year was the perfect storm of everything great that could possibly happen at Syracuse. This year, it's just they're a young football team, especially on offense, and this is nuts. So what I'm looking at here, this is by far the hardest. And I think you mentioned at Notre Dame too. I mean, just there's a lot going on here. I'm going to take the under. If they do, I'll tell you what. If they make a bowl game on this schedule, just a bowl game, not even 10 like they did last year. Fran Brown's got that program rolling.
Yeah.
And I don't think this year, even if they don't make a bowl, I don't think it's an indictment on him. This is the perfect storm of things I wouldn't want to happen for this program this year.
Yeah. That's why sometimes when people I was one of them who was loving Fran Brown after the 10-3 record last year.
Sure.
Pump the brakes a little bit considering how easy the schedule was. The Miami win was huge. But also this year, it's almost like...
Well, but they had a talented team. That was a talented football. There was several NFL players on that team.
But what I'm saying
this year, I'm not sure they have.
I understand people pumping the brakes on last year. I also want to say pump the brakes if they have a bad year this year because this schedule is brutal.
Yeah.
This is as hard of a schedule as you'll find in the ACC this year.
He got him relevant last year. Now he's going to start building long-term with the recruiting.
Yes.
You got faith he knows how to win games.
Yeah.
You don't just go winning 10 games at Syracuse nowadays. It's not easy.
So I'll go under 2. I hate going under on my Orange, but
your brother's going to be mad at you.
My brother's going to be pissed. But this is my brother who's a rising junior at Syracuse right now, by the way. I'll go under, but just because the schedule's brutal. This is such a hard schedule.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So I'll go soft under 5, I'll go 5 and 7 for Cuse next year, unfortunately. All right, final 3 schools now. Starting off with the Virginia Cavaliers. So Tony Elliott started off his Virginia tenure with back-to-back 3-win seasons. Had some improvement last year in year 3 with a 5-7 record. They still missed a bowl game though. That obviously wasn't enough to go bowling. Cavaliers now have not played in a bowl game since their Orange Bowl appearance back in 2019. So the last 5 years, they've missed out on a bowl game. There's some optimism, though, that could change. You see their win total right now is 6.5. Vegas thinks they will make a bowl game in 2025. They upgraded their roster to the portal at quarterback, on the offensive line, and in the secondary. Still some questions in the team's weaponry right now, but they did a good job in the portal, Dawn, and really that secondary could be pretty good this year.
No, absolutely. They've had a reputation lately for putting especially safety. When you think about Shamari Connor, this past year they had it's Jonas Sanker. I had to think it took me a sec. We get so many names on this show. But no, absolutely. I think if they can – last year the defense I think was in the front end it was a little bit of a struggle, especially stopping the run. But you look at this secondary and what they have back there, they've got a shot to keep themselves in games. And I think their offense with Chandler Morris at quarterback could be a little more consistent and not put them in so many bad spots. But certainly that's what you're looking at, a team to be solid in coverage, keep the back end on, don't give up too many explosive plays, and keep you in ball games for sure.
Definitely. I am a little worried with the receiving core, though. So they upgraded quarterback and on the offensive line, but they were 104th in receiving grade last year. And Malachi Fields, who I think is a top 15 receiver in the country. In fact, he's my honorable mention receiver on our top 10 receiver rankings. So he's basically my number 11 receiver in college football. He transferred over to Notre Dame. And your top tight end, too, and Tyler Neville is gone, too. So I'm really worried with the receiving core right now that wasn't very good last year, and you lose a star receiver in Malachi Fields.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's going to be the challenge for Chandler Morris. And Chandler Morris, a guy who went down to North Texas last year after transferring there from TCU. Injury-plagued 2023 at TCU, went down to North Texas, high-flying offense down there. Really became the gunslinger, right? Kind of the same way we just mentioned with Kyle McCord at Syracuse. Morris went down there and did that at North Texas. 27 big-time throws last year, 6th most in the country. It's a very vertical offense. I don't necessarily know that he's going to get as vertical this year in Virginia. They don't quite do things like that. But decent runner. Top 20 passing grade last year, especially over the middle of the field, down the seams of a defense. If he can attack those safeties down the middle, Morris can make a lot of really good throws. The only thing is when you become that much of a gunslinger, just like McCord, is 23 turnover-worthy plays that were the 3rd most in the country. So 6th most big-time throws, 3rd most turnover-worthy plays, 17 of those 23 into zone coverage. So there's times where he's trying to force it for sure into certain tighter windows, and also 13 turnover-worthy plays on intermediate throws. 3 more than any other player in the country. So he's going to let it rip. No question. Chandler Morris, look, he got booted from TCU. Josh Hoover took his job after an injury and all of that. He came out pissed off last year. He played well at North Texas, especially in the first half of the season. Now he's coming back up to Virginia to prove he can do it at a Power 4 level.
Definitely. So they brought in some really good transfers in the offensive line. I will say one of them, Monroe Mills, who's a really good tackle from Louisville. He's out for the entirety of the 2025 season with a torn ACL. That's a brutal loss for them. They still have a great center coming in, though, in Brady Wilson. Brady Wilson was one of the best centers in America last year at UAB. 85.5 PFF grade, was 3rd among all centers in college football. He was one of only 2 centers in America with top 10 grades as both a pass blocker and as a run blocker. On 1,211 career pass blocking snaps, Brady Wilson has only given up 1 sack so far in his career. He's a great player and should be a great center for Chandler Morris this year.
No, I agree with that. One of the most, we have a lot of good centers in college football right now, and he's one we have yet to mention this offseason. He's darn good. He was really good at UAB last year.
So mentioned before, great secondary at Virginia this year, and really the star of that unit, Dawn, is that they're at safety.
Another safety. It feels like a theme every year now. We've got another Virginia Cavaliers safety who's solid, and Antonio Clary's the guy who only played 5 games before tearing his ACL last year, but he was really good. 79.6 PFF grade, 86.9 run defense grade, and I think that's a big thing with these Virginia safeties, right? I talked about Shamari Connor, Jonas Sanker. These guys are physical. They're big and they're physical, and for some reason this school has become a box safety factory. Antonio Clary's the next guy. As long as he comes back healthy, you're talking about a guy who can really help you down in the box. This team needs more run support. If they're going to get it from their secondary and a guy like Clary, there's nothing wrong with that. Take it by any means necessary, but he's the one who's next in line as long as he's healthy.
So the win total, like I said before, set at 6.5, which basically Vegas is saying they're going to have their best year in 5 or 6 years at Virginia. Dawn, it feels like a make-or-break year 4 for Tony Elliott. It feels like they need to make a bowl game in 2025 for him to stay as the head coach. Will they make a bowl game, and will they go over 6.5? I'm going to go under.
I'm going to go under with leaving. It leaves you open the possibility that they could go 6-6.
Yeah.
Right? Because I see 1, 2, maybe 3 games, depending on what we think of Wake Forest. I don't see a lot of gimmies here. Even week 1, Coastal Carolina, that's generally a pretty good football team. That's not a gimme.
Like William and Mary's the one.
Yeah, that one. And
Washington State without Jake Dicker could be interesting.
We don't know where that's going. I would still take him to beat Stanford.
Yeah.
But it depends what you think of Chandler Morris. Because if Chandler Morris, here's the thing. If he comes up and it's just because it's not North Texas and the American and he really cooled down the second half of last year, if you think Chandler Morris is going to come in and turn the football over and play more like, he played very hot and cold the second half of last year. If you think that's going to be the case, you're probably not a huge believer in this. I like that they got him in, but if you look at the way his grading went, the second half of last year, it slowed down a lot. I think I'm still going to go under, which leaves me the possibility of them still going 6-6 and being kind of optimistic about it. But there's just not a lot of star power. And you mentioned the concern at wide receiver. I'd feel a lot better if they still had Malachi Fields.
Yeah.
That's for sure, because I think that's a guy that Morris would have loved throwing to.
Yeah. I look at this right now. They haven't won 7 games in a season since 2019. Like, I don't know. It's tough for me to say they're going to go 7-5 when they haven't done it in 5 years.
Last year, they won 4 of their first 5 against the softer part of the schedule, and then they lost 6 out of 7.
Yeah.
When it got real in the ACC, it really kind of fell apart on them, and they upset Pitt at one point, but that was an ugly football game.
I'm surprised it's 6.5. I would have made it 5.5. Honestly, I don't know. Expecting them to have their best year in 6 years.
Getting over that hump is something. I'm with it. I'm going under.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they could make a bowl game. I just think 5.5 is much more of a realistic line for Virginia right now, and it's a huge year for it. This is a big year for Tony Elliott. He needs to make a bowl game, I think, this year. And we'll see if they could do it in 2025. Their arch rival is up next in the Virginia Tech Hokies. So they had a lot of hype going into 2024. They brought back basically the entirety of their roster from the 2023 season. But they once again disappointed under Brent Pry with a 6-7 record overall. The Hokies have now never been in the top 25 ever in a season under Brent Pry during his 3 years there. They haven't had 3 seasons where they haven't been in the top 25 since 1990 to 1992. Pressure like it is mounting on Tony Elliott, it's mounting on Brent Pry right now too. They need to take the next step in 2025. They did a pretty solid job in the transfer portal, bringing in some solid players, but they will need their passing game to take a step forward in order to avoid being a mediocre team in the ACC once again. Dawn, this defense, though, especially off the edge, they lost some great pass rushers, yes, to the NFL, but they brought in some really good ones, too.
Yeah, it feels like they have this tradition at Virginia Tech of having a really good pass rush. We saw it last year with Antoine Powell-Ryland and Aeneas Peebles. I think the headliner here is Ben Bell, coming in from Texas State, playing only a few games last year and then intentionally taking his red shirt that he still had in his back pocket to transfer to a bigger program like this. So I think you talk about Ben Bell and this pass rush and the 4-man rush that this team can bring. I think that's really the most dangerous part of this team. It was last year. I think when you watch Virginia Tech, you go, they get pressure, right? They're going to do it once again with Ben Bell and this defensive line this year. That's going to be a big key. It's a team by design. You don't want to fall behind. They want to run the football. They've got a dynamic pass rush. Do not fall behind Virginia Tech, especially late in games. You'll still have problems with them.
Yeah, this passing game I have a little bit of worries about right now. They're 108th in EPA per pass last year. Kyron Jones is back at quarterback, but he had a 73.2 passing grade last year, is outside the top 50 in college football. Virginia Tech also lost their top 4 receivers from last year too. So I'm a little worried about that passing game right now, even though I love Terrion Stewart coming in at running back. Tell me more about Kyron Jones, though, Don. What you know about him?
There's a lot to know about Kyron Jones because he is as high and low as any quarterback in the country. First of all, he's got tools. He's 235 pounds. He can really run. He's really hard to tackle, especially when they get the option game going with him. And he's got an absolute bazooka of an arm. I'd say a top 10 arm strength in the country. There are moments with Kyron Jones where you go, oh, there's just not many guys that can do with what he does, right? I think sometimes it's similar to me watching tape of Talon Green down at Arkansas and when he was at Boise as well, where he's big, he's fast, he's got a cannon, he can run, he can do all – it all looks the part. And then he gets out there, especially in drop-back situations, and it's just not quite there. Play-action passing, spectacular. 90 play-action grade last year, 7th in the country. Here's the problem. The last 2 years, 55 non-play action passing grade over the last 2 years, 7th worst in the country. So you hate to say system quarterback, but that's kind of how it is. He's going to run the ball. He's going to do really well in the option game and the design game because he's so hard to tackle. He can chuck the deep ball. Even deep crossers in the intermediate range, he's really good at throwing those, right? But it's just a matter of consistent accuracy. I look at him so much in the same way I look at, say, an Avery Johnson, too, at Kansas State. When they're ahead and the run game's rolling and they're within their scheme and within their identity, Kyron Drones is pretty good. When they're not and they're behind and they're down 10 with 8 minutes to go and I need to drop back and throw the football, I don't have a ton of faith that he's going to be able to get it done because his footwork's erratic, the accuracy's erratic. It's always fastball when it comes to him. He's got a rifle, but he's only got one speed. So there's a lot to like about Kyron Drones, especially with his physical tools and his ability to run the ball, but there's not a consistent enough effort production in the drop back game to go, okay, yeah, I believe he can lead us in a 2-minute drill.
Yeah.
When it's the same way I feel about Avery Johnson at K-State.
Yeah, just a roller coaster tape from Kyron Jones. One guy who's pretty consistent, though, is his new guard protecting him in Tomas Remak, who joins Virginia Tech after a really good redshirt junior year at West Virginia. 78.6 PFF grade last year, was 5th among all guards in the Power 4, one of only 6 guards in the Power 4 who had 75-plus grades as both a pass blocker and as a run blocker. He was the 3rd most valuable guard in the Power 4 last year, according to our wins above average metric. He's a top 10 interior offensive lineman for me going into next season. But he will probably be playing right tackle for Virginia Tech this year after playing left guard for his entire career. So it'll be interesting to watch his transition to playing right tackle from left guard, but regardless, he's a great offensive lineman they got in the portal.
Yeah, I think the position switch will be fun to watch, but I do love the fit. Going from West Virginia, another very run-heavy team with a lot of diverse schemes, to this Virginia Tech offense. I do think, if they feel like he's good enough at tackle, and especially he can pass protect out there, no issue with that at all. I think he's a great fit considering where he came from, right down the road in West Virginia, to this team. It's the right guy to spotlight because they're still going to, and they've got Terrion Stewart in the backfield coming in from Bowling Green. He's an interesting player. They're still going to want to run the football more often than not in this offense. Remak's going to be a good part of it.
I wanted to spotlight Stewart too because he is one of the most efficient tackle breakers we've seen in recent years at PFF. His numbers are insane. So I wanted to get him in, but Remak was one of my top 10 interior offensive linemen. I had to get him in here, but Stewart could be a fun player. After losing Bashal Tootin, yes, he's a great player, but Stewart could be a great running back in the offense.
You got to strap up when you're playing Drones and Stewart this backfield. You're gonna be having to hit pretty hard for the entire 60 minutes.
So a great running back transferring in from the Group of 5 level, a great guard transferring in too from West Virginia, and also Dalton, a amazing pass rusher coming in from Texas State.
Ben Bell in from Texas State, a little brother of Levi Bell who was in the NFL for a bit. He's undersized and he does not care. He's a stand-up outside linebacker who over the last 2 years has a 30% pass rush win rate. That's just ridiculous. If you're in the low to mid 20s, you're an elite player. This guy's at 30, 22.4% pressure rate, 93.8 pass rush grade. I mean, just ridiculous pass rush production, even at the Sun Belt level. And look, he's undersized, but he's got an arsenal. He's got burst off the edge. We can talk about length and height and all that stuff later with the NFL draft, but as a college pass rusher, Virginia Tech's getting an elite guy. I don't care where he did it at. They are getting a monster off the edge in Ben Bell.
So his 30% pass rush win rate over the last 2 years, nobody else in the country was even at 27%. And then you mentioned the pressure rate and the pass rush grade. The only 2 players who are above him in those metrics, Laiatu Latu, James Pierce Jr., 2 first-round picks. Now, Ben Bell won't be a first-round pick, I don't think, is a lack of length. And also coming up from the Group of 5 level, too. But he is an awesome pass rusher at the Texas State.
Throw a name out there. Maybe this is the ceiling name. But, I mean, why not? Why couldn't he be like a Josiah Stewart type?
Yeah, it could be.
Like Coastal to Michigan, ended up a third-round pick. Probably a situational pass rusher in the NFL. That could be the type of guy you're talking about.
I could definitely see that. All right, their win total, Dalton, is set at 6.5 right now. Will Virginia Tech take a step forward this year in what is a huge year 4 for Brent Pry, or will they be kind of the same in 2025?
Boy, their first 2 games. What is it, 6.5?
6.5.
Their first 2 games are a whole lot of fun. They get to go down to Atlanta and play South Carolina, neutral field. Are they going to get revenge on Vandy? Vandy beat him last year. They're going to get revenge on Vanderbilt? I remember at the time that was like a massive upset. It was like everybody had Virginia Tech as the ACC dark horse, and Vandy comes in there and beats them. That was crazy. I mean, 1, 2, 3. If I want to say 4.
I'm going under. I want to say over. I'm going to go under. I think 6-6 is what they're going to do again. They need drones, and they need to find some new receivers too. That's really the X factor.
Jalen Lane is gone.
The top 4 receivers are gone.
Bashal Tutin's gone. I know we like Stewart, but Bashal Tutin added a home run element. Let's see. I see like 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 games I like them in. I'm
going under. I think 6-6 again.
Yeah, you're killing me. The lack of weapons is tough.
Yeah.
The road schedule's not bad at all, really. And it always feels like they're right on the brink, too, in all these games.
Know.
Oh, you're killing me. Wow.
I'm going under.
You're killing
Which
me.
might not be the best for Brent Pry's future at that program, but I just think 6-6 is probably going to do again.
I know. I'm in between on this. I'm going to squeak them over at 7-5.
All right.
They're one of those teams in the middle. There's going to be coin flip games played. We're going to see. I mean, they probably have a range anywhere from 4-8 to 8-4, and none of it would shock me at all. But I maybe not 4-8. That might be harsh. But I'll squeak them over at 7-5. That's going to be tight.
Yeah. All right. Final one here in ACC preview is the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. They were humming along in 2021 and 2022 with Sam Hartman as the quarterback. 19-8 record across those 2 years. But they've had back-to-back 4-8 seasons right now. And their head coach, Dave Clawson, he resigned after 11 years. Jake Dickert was brought in as his replacement. Dickert had done a really solid job during his 4 years at Washington State, going 8-4 in his final year there. He's a defensive-minded head coach, and he should really enjoy the second and third levels he has on that defense. New offensive coordinator in Rob Ezel, too. He has his work cut out for him, though, with so many new faces in that passing game. But, Dalton, the middle of Wake Forest's defense should be pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. You start at the linebacker level with Quincy Bryant and Dylan Hazen, right? I think it's the middle of that defense that you feel good about. Starting linebackers returning, 2 starting safeties returning, and Nick Anderson and Devon Patterson. So I think that's where it really starts. If they can get the middle of the defense settled in, going to need a little bit more of a pass rush, I think, up front to really succeed against some of the better offenses in this conference. But I think you feel pretty good at least about the core of this defense in the middle, and then the way that Dickert's going to have to build it on the outside.
Yeah, this passing game I'm a little worried about, though, right now. So they have a new quarterback in Robbie Ashford, transfers in from South Carolina, started a lot of games at Auburn, too. In his career at South Carolina and Auburn, he has a 53.3 passing grade. They also lost all of their top 4 receivers from last year and all 5 starters from their offensive line. That was 33rd in pass blocking grade last year. So they had some really good players in the offensive line last year. All 5 starters are gone. Top 4 receivers are gone too. And a quarterback in Robbie Ashford that's really struggled as a passer throughout his career. Tell me more about him, though, Dalton.
Yeah, we are. I would right now, from the outside, say that Ashford's the favorite with a little bit of SEC experience to him. They also have Charlotte transferred Deshaun Purdy, who has a big arm and started several games for Charlotte. I think maybe close to the entire season for Charlotte last year, but also had a ridiculous turnover-worthy play rate of almost 8%. So we'll go with Ashford. I think the idea with him, as it was a little bit in Washington State last year with John Mateer, I think you're basing an offense, to me, if you're starting Robbie Ashford around his legs.
Yeah.
He is a dangerous runner, right? You're talking about 54 explosive runs over the last 3 years. That's a top 20 mark in the country, even though he's a lot further down on the amount of carries that he's had compared to other quarterbacks. He hasn't always been a starter right down there at what, Auburn and then South Carolina it was, right? I mean, so I think you want to run the football if Robbie Ashford's in the game as much as you possibly can. I think that's where he's going to have success. Now, he himself, 4.6% turnover-worthy play rate, not great, has just never looked all that comfortable from the pocket. 17 fumbles in his career in less than 1,000 snaps. So I think just the pocket presence and the ball security needs to get better from whichever of these quarterbacks is starting. Like I said, I would assume Ashford's the favorite with the higher level experience, and Purdy, he's got a big arm. But again, it's with either of these guys, ball security is going to be everything. You cannot have your quarterbacks putting the ball in danger as much as these two do.
Yeah, absolutely. One guy who should help him out a lot, though, in that run game, and could be a really dynamic rushing attack with Robbie Ashford, is Damon Claiborne. So really, a lot of their offense was centered around him last year. He was fourth among all ACC running backs last year with 742 rushing yards after contact, and he was fifth in the ACC with 45 forced missed tackles. He was also a pretty effective receiver out of the backfield. He was fifth in the conference with a 73.4 receiving grade, too. He hasn't fumbled once on over 400 career touches, too. He now enters his third year as the top running back for the Demon Deacons, and he should be the bell cow for this offense next year.
Also the primary kick returner, too.
True.
A dynamic three-way player when it comes to him, and NFL scouts are actually talking about Claiborne as a really dynamic player who can do a little bit of everything. He is absolutely the engine of their offense there. If I will give you that, if it's Ashford starting, the combination of him and Claiborne could be fun.
The read option, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You really need to rely on the run game as much as possible. I think with these, but especially if it's those two guys, it gives you a lot more options.
A really solid linebacker they have too, Dalton, and Quincy Bryant.
Absolutely. Quincy Bryant, 84.8 PFF grade, best in the ACC, 86.7 coverage grade, third among all Power 4 linebackers last year. Again, we talk about the middle of this defense being the foundation of it. That's what you get with Quincy Bryant as your middle linebacker. So I think when you're talking about, he did it on a limited-ish sample size last year, around 350 snaps, but in a full starting role with what he showed you with his athleticism and especially his ability in coverage, really good foundation I think they have here in the middle with Bryant and with Dylan Hazen next to him as well.
Yeah, definitely. He wasn't even a starter for Wake Forest last year, but he could be a breakout star at linebacker, and he could become one of the best linebackers in the country as a full-time starter for Wake Forest this year. Win total, Dalton, is set at 4.5 for Jake Dickert in his first year as Wake Forest's head coach. Will they go over or under? So basically, will they go 4-8 or worse once again, or will they bounce back and have a little bit better year? I think I'm gonna go under for this team. It's a pretty tough schedule.
Let's see. I think they should start 2-0. At Oregon State is interesting. We don't know what Oregon State is this year either. Virginia's tight. Delaware coming in. It's not a bad team either, though. Blue Hens, first year in the FBS for the Blue Hens. Yeah, they've been Missouri State.
Huge.
We'll get to
I'm coaching them right now in College Bowl 26. That's my first dynasty school.
That's a good call. I like that. I always confuse their uniforms with Michigan. Anyway,
Joe Flacco.
4 or 5. Where are we going here? I'll take the under.
Yeah, I'm going under too.
At Virginia's a 50-50 game.
Oregon State, I think it's a 50-50 game.
Oregon, it's a West Coast trip, too. I'll take the under as well. I think Jake Dickert, really, I think this year is the same thing as a lot of first-year coaches. Let's get in here and figure out what we have and how we need to build this thing.
I think they're pretty clearly underdogs in almost every other game, and I think the Oregon State game and the Virginia game are two coin flips.
And they're on the road.
They need to win both those coin flips in order to win 4 games.
And then... Yeah, you're right. In order to get to 5,
or 5. Sorry, yes, 5.
You got to win. You have to win both of those games, or you got to pull an upset.
Yeah,
and they're both on the road. Yeah, sure. I'll take the under. We'll see. I think Jake Dickert. This is a building year. It's year 1.
Yeah, but that wraps up our ACC preview. I want to thank you guys for watching along for all these previews. This is our final one of the conference previews. It's been 4 3-hour shows for you guys too. Of course, Notre Dame will be getting their own preview. Of course, later on in the probably the weekend, it will be coming out next week. We'll be going back to 2 shows a week. No longer one mammoth show. We'll have 2 shows a week, only about a month away from the college football season now too. So we're going into all of our predictions for next year, everything. So Monday and Thursday, once again at 1 p.m., we'll be going live on this channel. I want to thank you guys again, though, for tuning in for all 68 of these previews. For our producers back there, Eli and Ty, for Dalton Wassman, I'm Max Chadwick. We'll see you guys next Monday for the next episode of the PFF College Football Show.